like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Mayor and Council, Tuesday, February 21st, 2017. Can I please ask everyone to rise for a moment of silent prayer? And I'm asking everyone to please remember this evening Leona Fox, who was the sister of our Fire Department Lieutenant Len Koyman, and aunt of Firefighter Mallory and Lieutenant Brian Koyman. Oh, Councilman Pinigo, lead us in the salute to the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're going to do that very often, Dario, until I get your pronunciation right. So.
Sounds good.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Borough Hall, by email to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to the same as provided by a law of the schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. I'd like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits in our council chambers, 1 on each side of the dais and 1 in the rear. Roll call, please.
Councilman Patricia is absent. Notice. Councilman Barone.
Here.
Councilman Lucy. Here. Councilman Pinigo.
Here.
Councilwoman Davis.
Here.
Councilman Papanoni. I did it.
So there's 2 pronunciations. You give Papaleo or Papa Leo, L-E-O. So try the other, Papa Leo, and that would be good. I'm here. Here. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the Mayor and Council regular meeting of January 17, 2017, and work session meeting of February 6, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Wonderful. Some opposed?
Just a second.
Okay, we have 2 proclamations this evening. First is declaring the month of March 2017 as Women's History Month. And I'm going to ask our 2 councilwomen to accept it on behalf of the borough. I'll read it into the record. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas American women have played and continue to play a critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation, and whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas American women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history, now therefore be resolved that I, as Mayor of the Borough of River Edge, in recognition thereof, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2017 as Women's History Month. Councilwoman?
Have to rip it in half.
We'll take pictures, so anyway.
Under 6
Accept this on behalf of the borough. That is already done. Our second proclamation this evening is declared March 12th to 18th as Girl Scout Week. Do we have somebody representing the Girl Scouts? Please come up. Who do we have this evening?
She's a daisy.
Teresa Lewis, I'm a brownie.
Marty.
Tara Daly, I'm a cadet. I'm Olivia Power.
Okay, I'll read the proclamation. Whereas throughout the long history of Girl Scouts, certain traditions remain meaningful and important and are still practiced today. And whereas every year, the week containing Girl Scout birthday, March 12th, is bookended by celebrating the connection between Girl Scouts and their faith. And whereas Girl Scout week begins Sunday before March 12th, the day known as Girl Scout Sunday, and extends through Saturday following March 12th, the day known as Girl Scout Sabbath. And whereas the Girl Scout birthday on March 12th commemorates the day in 1912 when Juliet Gordon Lowe officially registered the organization's first 18 girl members in Savannah, Georgia, and this year represents the 105th birthday. And whereas since its founding in 1912, the Girl Scouts have enjoyed the support of religious organizations, and together they have enriched the spiritual lives of Girl Scout members, each of whom strives from the perspective of their own personal belief to live up to the Girl Scout promise and law. Now therefore be it resolved that I, as mayor of the borough of River Edge, in recognition thereof, do hereby proclaim March 12th to 18th, 2017 as Girl Scout Week. And girls,
if you take the picture, madam, if you take the picture by standing by the window, you'll be able to get the seal in the background. You might like that better. Welcome.
Then you get a picture of Alan.
Yes.
In his car.
I've mentioned this many times with regard to the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, that anytime they have any events, to let us know, because I know myself and members of the council are very big supporters of all your endeavors, and all you have to do is ask us. We will be there and support you however we can. We think it's a very important and crucial organization in the town. So like I said, anywhere we can support you, just let us know. Okay, right, can I please have a motion to open to the public for comments on any issue on the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would any of the public like to ask any questions or have any comment regarding a specific agenda item? Keep in mind that we also have public hearings on several different ordinances this evening, where you'll have another opportunity to speak on a specific ordinance. Yes, Mr. Zemmons.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Mayor and Council, I'm here once again as President of River Edge PDA Local 201 to speak on behalf of our members in opposition to Ordinance 17-4 as it is currently drafted. PBA continues to advocate for the captain's position to be maintained and filled. As mentioned in the past, with an ever-increasing population in town and workload, the police department is now generating over 10,000 calls to service a year, over 125 criminal complaints, over 2,000 motor vehicle summonses, and multiple warrant arrests. Such calls include armed robberies, burglaries, domestic violence incidents, significant motor vehicle accidents, drug-related incidents, and juvenile incidents. With the calls for service comes a responsibility and time factor due to the complexity of the nature of these calls and the level of service and commitment we offer to our residents. Moreover, with the new criminal justice reform that has been implemented as of January 1st, 2017, it has created an additional workload for the lieutenants. If there's a time to fill the captain's position, it is now. Local is advocating for the captain's position to be maintained and filled for a variety of reasons, but one of the main reasons is supervision. Supervision is one of the biggest areas of potential liability, and by filling the captain's position, you will create efficient and streamlined supervision within the department. We'll also offer a clear line of succession in the absence of the chief. It has been said already that there's a clear line of succession by having the senior lieutenant in charge. However, to have one lieutenant tell another lieutenant what to do is not good practice. That's why we have ranks and chain of command, and not a department of 21 patrolmen. By filling the additional rank, you are filling a post where when the chief is unavailable, the captain will be in charge. Furthermore, you can act as a liaison between the divisions to allow for coordination between them, direct both lieutenants, and work toward building morale and a spirit of corps in the River Edge Police Department. The captain's responsibilities are currently divided up among the two lieutenants, which is taken away from their main focus as operational positions in charge of investigations and patrol. With the latest criminal justice reform being implemented and the new rules evolving from court decisions because of appeals about how it's being executed, the lieutenants are essential to making sure that River Edge completes our criminal complaints appropriately. By filling the captain position, we will allow that person to assume the administrative responsibilities and allow the lieutenants to focus their attention on operational issues. Captain can also take on the project of fully implementing the new computer system. This would include working with the new vendor as well as our old vendor to assure an effective transition, as we have already experienced some hiccups. The captain would also be responsible for cultivating an environment that would build morale and a spirit de corps of the department, as these principles start from the top of the hierarchy, or the tree, as Councilman Aquafreda termed it in the first meeting. This is extremely important, especially in a department our size. In order to foster a good work ethic and work product, when morale is lacking, members tend not to want to be as proactive or in some cases seek other employment. Mr. Wunsch and I both previously used the governor and lieutenant governor parallel. Tonight I'd like to bring it to our town, River Edge. The mayor is ultimately in charge of what happens in this town. It's his responsibility to set direction for the town and steer the town appropriately to ensure it accomplishes its goals that it has set out. He is responsible for all department heads. He is responsible to make sure the residents' needs are tended to by the borough. But who runs the day-to-day operations to make sure that this gets accomplished? Alan does. So while the mayor is the chief of the town, Alan is the captain who runs these day-to-day operations. Stephanie and Judy, as borough clerk and deputy clerk, are the lieutenants who execute the tasks of the borough. I know the respect that Alan commands from this mayor and council and the history that he offers on issues within the town. Imagine not having Alan in this position for the last 20 years. Since I brought up time, while the captain's position has not been filled in 20 years, it was the decision of then Chief Sturrace to fill it with a civilian administrative coordinator. The position lacks supervision, responsibility, policy writing ability, direction powers of sworn officers, and ultimately the ability to respond to calls as a police officer. Civilian administrative coordinator spot has since been removed from the department, which the PBA supports. But for clarification, the civilian administrative position has only been absent from the department for 8 years, during which members took contract concessions and furloughs to assist the borough with the dire financial straits that it was in. So while it is said that the captain's position has been empty for 20 years, it was in fact filled with a civilian for 13 of them and has only been empty for 8. This was also during the same time Chief Caridi was told by the mayor and council to cut money from his budget in order to have the money available to promote sergeants to lieutenants, as he had no command staff with the retirements of Chief Sturrace and Lieutenant Hallburn. Lastly, there have been some questions or concerns about whether the captain's position is maintained, filled, and turned into an overnight position. PBA's response is that the position always has been a daytime position in this department, and it would defeat the purpose of unity of command that the PBA is working toward. The captain is responsible for reporting to the chief and receiving information from the lieutenants. All of these administrative personnel work during the day. To ensure there is clarity in communication, the PBA would expect the captain's position to be a daytime position. It would also defeat the purpose of the command staff position, reassuming administrative functions that the position once performed and should perform again, because the business and borough entities the position would be in contact with would not be available. The PBA is not looking to add additional personnel. We're merely looking for a necessary supervisory position to be filled with the current manpower the department has. Maintaining and filling the captain position would decrease blurred lines of authority, create consistency and stability in the chain of command within the department, allow the lieutenants to shift their focus to their primary responsibilities, work toward increasing the esprit de corps of the department, and decrease the potential of grievances, lawsuits, and unfair labor practices. The last thing that I'd like to bring to the attention is that circa 2013, 2014, members were in our, it's called Power DMS. It's a document management system where we sign off on memos and policies and procedures that are put out by the administration. And circa 2013, 2014, members had come across a document that appears to be rules and regulations, or a draft of rules and regulations for the police department that specifically has a captain's position in it. And in it, it says the captain shall be in second in command of the department during the absence of the chief of police or director. The captain shall assume the duties of the chief of police or director, and during such period shall exercise the same powers, perform the same duties, and be subject to the same rules and regulations as the chief of police or the director. So I think this draft policy, again, circa 2013-2014, just echoes the sentiments that we are pushing to have accomplished now by not moving forward with the ordinance the way it is currently drafted, but to continue to maintain the captain position on the table and move forward in getting it filled. Thank you.
Would any other member of the public like to make a comment or have a question on any specific agenda item? There will be other opportunities to speak before the council today. Yes, sir.
How do you do? My name is John Highland. I'm a resident of River Edge for 19 years. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for volunteering your time for these positions. It's heartening to see that people are willing to volunteer their time.
Excuse me, sir, we also need your address, name and
I'm
address.
sorry. John Highland, Hyland, 545 Fifth Avenue in River Edge.
Thank you.
I'm a retired police officer from Phoenix PD. I retired as a detective sergeant. In my experience, I have found that a clear chain of command is necessary for the department to run efficiently. I was a firearms instructor in Teaneck, and one of the issues that I would tell my men was that just because we're in a Bergen County, a small area or a small town, you might be lulled into a certain sense of complacency because nothing ever happens in River Edge, right? Well, that is a very dangerous way to conduct yourself or to conduct your business, because it's just that type of thing that makes you, I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize, but it's just that type of thing that would make you complacent and maybe miss a few cues on a motor vehicle stop or whatever it is, and you would be surprised. As opposed to being a New York City police officer where you go out there and you're expecting the bad stuff to happen. Being a small department in River Edge, New Jersey, I think the council has to be aware that supervision is the most important thing that you can supply the department. It's your biggest liability should anything go wrong. So a lawyer could pop up at any time and start picking holes in your defense if you don't properly have the department supervised or have a chain of command. As I understand it right now, there are for sergeants are handling some of the decisions captains are making. So this would, in effect, have a sergeant telling a lieutenant what to do. A person who is lower in rank telling somebody in higher in rank what they have to do, because the captain is not there to handle this situation. It's demoralizing for the men, and I think it's a liability for the department. So I hope I helped with some perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public want to make any comments at this time? Can I have a motion to close to the public, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have 3 appointments that I have made. I appointed Nancy Chang as alternate 2 to the Shade Tree Commission to fill the unexpired term of Elizabeth Evis through 12/31/18. I have appointed Laura Hoopstreet as Chair of the Environmental Protection Commission effective February 15, 2017. And I have appointed Pamela Gould as alternate 1 to the Environmental Protection Commission to fill the unexpired term of Brian Mitchell through 12/31/17. Appointment and personnel changes. Can I please have a motion to approve the resignation of Elizabeth Evis, alternate 2 of the Shade Tree Commission effective January 25th, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I please have a motion to approve the salary increase of Renata Sanchez, Patrol Officer, from an annual salary of $71,597 to Patrol Officer 14th grade, $79,858, effective February 7th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I please have a motion to approve the salary increase of Anthony Roman, Patrol Officer, from an annual salary of $71,597 to Patrol Officer 14th grade, $79,858, effective February 7th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And can I please have a motion to approve the salary increase of Daniel Lee, Patrol Officer, from an annual salary of $122,008.62 to $124,400.95 due to an increase in longevity from 2% to 4%, effective February 3rd, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have various pieces of correspondence listed in the agenda. Copies are available through the clerk's office if anybody's interested in reading the details. We also have on file monthly reports for the Historic Commission for November 2016, our annual debt statement for the year 2016, Farmers Market Committee from January 2017, Recreation Committee, November 2016, Shade Tree Commission, December 2016, the Board of Health for January 2017, our annual financial statement for the year 2016, Beautification Committee for January 2017, Tax Collector Report for December 2016, Zoning Board of Adjustment Minutes for January 2017, October 2016, and July 2016, Environmental Commission for February 2017, and our Shade Tree Commission for January 2017. We have several public hearings tonight. The first one is we're having a public hearing on the allocations for our Open Space Trust Fund. Can I please have a motion to open the public hearing?
So, second?
Roll call, please.
Councilman Bonamoni?
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve? Yes. Councilman Canino?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis? Yes. Councilman Chicoleo?
Yes.
Alan, you want to just give an overview at this point?
Thank you, Mayor. Borough of Riverhead adopted municipal open space tax in 2012, and it's a 5-year tax. And each year we hold a public hearing and send out invitations to interested parties who would be eligible to have funding supplied underneath this open space tax. In addition, we also have a second hearing after this one tonight to take comment from the public as to whether this tax should be renewed for another 5 years, in which case we would place a question on the November ballot for the public to vote on. But this portion of the hearing is to talk about the allocation of the monies that we have available this year from the tax. This is a spreadsheet on the existing funding over the last several years. And for instance, the Recreation Commission has a total amount of funding from several years of tax of $220,271.63. The majority of which is going towards the Kenneth B. George lighting improvement. Some of the other entities that have funding, the 9/11 Memorial Committee has from prior years $4,050, Department of Public Works $120, Shade Tree Commission $25,257, but the majority of that money is being spent on a planting that you'll see this spring. In addition, let's see, beautification has $241 left, as you can see. Cherry Blossom Park, $36, Historic Commission $750, and the Green Team $1,906. So that's funding from prior years municipal open space funds which are still active and eligible to be spent. I've listed over here on the left-hand side the amount of money that's available this year. We have from the tax $145,689.87. We have a few $100s in unallocated funds, bringing the total to $146,455. We have received through correspondence these requests from these various groups. We sent that material out to you via email, and the 9/11 Memorial Garden request was in front of you tonight when you came in. All of these requests total $120,371, leaving a balance of $26,084. The budget process does require that we list our award amounts, so I would encourage the council to make those decisions as soon as possible. Tonight is the opportunity for clarification on any of these requests. I know that some of the groups are represented here tonight and would be available to answer questions.
How does council want to proceed? Do you want to have each group come up first, or do you want to?
Do you want to have the groups come up? I would guess start with rec.
Well,
Or you want to start with the smaller one?
yeah.
Shade Tree?
Shade Tree. Actually, I would start with 9/11 because I think that maybe that's for a modest request, and I think that's a worthy endeavor, so I don't think you need to even ask. I think that you should include their allocation.
Yeah, that's why I'm prepared to, they asked for 3,750, I would just move to book that amount.
Second.
That they asked for, so.
Yeah,
Good job.
John.
Good job.
Good job.
Great job.
Yeah.
I did point out that there's $4,050 remaining.
Yes.
And you still have about $3,800 in the trust fund from the original solicitation of the grant. So I was wondering whether you had something in mind for the
The main monies that are unallocated, the main thing that we haven't done, haven't finished, is an entryway marking of the garden. And while I don't believe it's going to cost anywhere near that, I'm not willing to give up that money right at the moment until we are in fact able to do it. It's something that has been on the burner to do. I haven't been able to find something that I think would be suitable for it, but that is something that hopefully will get done this year. Thank you for your continued support.
You're welcome.
Alan, do you want a motion at the end, or do you want it for each?
I think at the end,
Okay.
there's
You'll keep
a
it
motion to
up.
approve the whole, and then we can take a vote on it.
Okay. Shade Tree, or do you want to come up? Just read to the public and just read the allocations that they're requesting.
So you have our request in writing.
Yes.
The-
But I thought Alan, just read the amounts.
The shade tree requests are $5,000 for summer help, $10,585 for tree planting, $3,500 for mulch, and $200 for gypsum.
I'm good with that too.
Okay. Any questions?
Just one, I just have one question. Just, I was curious about the emerald, what's it, the emerald ash borer? Have you done an inventory in terms of like where those trees are in town, or are they in the parks, or are they on street trees?
There, the parks, we don't have as many ash in the parks. We have a street tree inventory, and I went on a state calculator and calculated what it would cost the town to start that process. And I think it was about $43,000 if we wanted to treat initially.
Mhm.
The recommendations from experts that we've heard from is to treat. It's in the long term, it's cost saving. But there is a talk, I left, a flyer, there's a talk at the, Jameson Fall Environmental Center on March 17th. So we're encouraging DPW to go, since there'll be workers in those trees. Once they get infected, they're dangerous to work with, and they'll probably be the first ones to spot it.
Because they get brittle, right?
Yeah, but they'll be the first ones to spot it, and then, we'll be going to that also, and anyone can go, it's a free program, so anyone who wants to come. And I think they may be discussing, shared services and trying to get together to do something with that.
Thanks.
Liz, you're aware that we reduced the capital budget for Shade Tree? No?
I don't know if
It's
that
operating
might
budget.
be-
It was operating budget, yeah. So, that's right, it was operating budget. Alan, could you just briefly share with Shade Tree the reduction in operating budget so that they're aware if they wish to make any recommendations at this point? Oh, he's not happy with that.
I'll have to refresh my memory because I don't have a recollection of it. So let me see.
Well, it's in the
I
law.
thought we kept the money in for the ash.
did.
We kept all the money in for the ash.
I think we reduced the planting amount.
We reduced the planting, so,
Okay, so we probably will not be able to plant street trees this year at all. Because we can't plant street trees at this moment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
because the emerald ash borer amount was so high, and the operating budget works factors differently, and I just wanted you to be aware of that, because I didn't know if you could modify anything, since we seem to have a little extra in the open space.
That was the council's point, if it were.
I wasn't here on Saturday,
Park
Saturday,
trees,
Sunday.
I think if
Yeah.
it was park trees, you probably could use some of that.
The oddity in the open space that you can't use it for street trees, I don't
Which is frustrating.
get that, I don't understand it, but you
The
can.
reduction was from 67,750 to 45,750. And as has been represented, in the allotment for the treatment was left in, but could also be used for planting if we don't use it for the treatment. So there's some flexibility.
And stumps? Is that still-
We left.
We left the stumps in. But I just wanted you to be aware of that, just in case you wished to make some change at this point.
Thank you.
On that,
Yeah,
a motion to accept the allocation.
So moved.
requested.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Alan, just for the record, can you just summarize the DPW request, because I think we already booked those through the budget process.
Yes, the Department of Public Works provides certain services in the parks. And John had made a request through his operating budget for this, but since the services and the materials are all used in the parks, these can be allocated to the open space. Trying to get the specific items for he has chemicals, grass seed, he does some maintenance on the mowers and the trimmers, things of that nature.
And that was 9,500, correct?
That was 9,500, correct.
And then there were two physical improvements, he calls them the hot boxes, I don't know if that's.
A hot box for electrical and plumbing in 140 Kinneconnect, and a hot box, which would be a new installation at KBG for the same purposes.
And so we booked those, I think we adopted those during the budget process. Okay, beautification, Michelle?
Should I move those Department of Public Works?
Yes, I thought we had already booked those in the budget.
You just want a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, Michelle?
How long more?
Good. See, there's well, to request up there?
Yes, we have, Cherry Blossom Park, $1,000, and then park maintenance, $2,500 beautification.
Any questions?
No. I'm ready to move it if the council has no question.
Second, great job.
Got a motion, Council?
Yeah, it is a motion, yes. Mayor.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You don't have to lobby so hard next time. And I guess lastly, but not leastly, Recreation Commission. Might have a quorum here.
Well, hopefully this will be as easy.
Why do you think we kept you till last?
My name is Jim Taylor, Chairman of the Recreation Commission. With us is Bobby Conway, who you all know. We've asked Bobby to be our spokesperson for this. She knows all the ins and outs of everything as part of every meeting that we have. So Bobby's going to go over our list of requests.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the list. If you have any questions, please stop me. I'll be happy to answer your question. Under park maintenance, we have a wood fiber surface that is safety surface for the playground, $4,820. Miscellaneous repairs and maintenance supplies for $3,000. Our park maintenance attendant, $4,000. Under field maintenance, we have our spring field maintenance setup, and that's on the 7 fields. That would be the edging, the rototilling, and adding of clay and grading for the setup for the start of the season, $11,850 for the 7 fields. The beam clay is for 3 fields. That would be for KBG, for Little League, and for Roosevelt Field. The stabilizer conditioner is for Roosevelt Field because we had a problem with a dust when we were dragging. The stabilizer will keep the dust down, and so we're going to be adding that to the clay, which is new this year. We're trying to keep the dust problem at the schools down, so that's $3,260. The sprinkler systems, that's set up for spring and winterization at the end of the season, and that would be at actually 4 locations: Little League, KBG, Memorial, and Cherry Blossom Park. Going to move on to the maintenance in the field projects. The replacement of the bathroom doors at the Little League building, they're rusting out. The replacement is not only just the door, but the door jamb all the way around it. It's metal, it's all rusted, so it's hard to open and close because it's unsightly and could be a little bit dangerous as well. The Cherry Hill School field renovation and resizing. Yes.
How much was that, what you just?
The doors,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't, it's $3,800 each, a total of $7,600. Is that, are we listed up there? Do you have the, okay.
It's not broken out up here.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, it's not broken down.
Oh, yeah. Do you have the paper in front of you?
No.
We don't have the.
It was emailed to us for the open space.
But that's okay, just so it's on the record, since it's not broken down up there, if you break them down from there, that's
Oh,
fine.
certainly, I just thought you were looking at the paper, I don't look at it. You-
No, I got it. Oh, yeah, that's easier. I got it. I actually wrote it down earlier. No.
Okay. I apologize, I thought you were looking at what I was reading, so, is there anything else that you would like me to go through before I continue? The individual items?
No, I think the maintenance and the other things were pretty standard that we see every year.
That's true. Actually, it didn't change from the previous years except for the stabilizer. When we get into the maintenance and field projects.
Yeah, it's usually the park project and the maintenance project, that's where we need a little more specific.
So the bathroom doors, once again, that's at the Little League building, the 2 doors, $3,800 each for a total of $7,600, and that's not only the doors, but it's all the door jamb as well, which is all metal. The next item is the Cherry Hill School field, renovation and resize. The current field is a 90-foot radius. We're bringing it down to a 50-foot radius, which would be Little League standard size. Those who play there are kindergarten through third grade, Little League. So they were resizing it to the appropriate size and renovating by taking out the clay that is currently there, which is full of the weeds, and every year the weeds come back. It's unsightly. So we're taking out the 4 to 6 inches of clay and replacing that clay. So it's 4 loads of clay. That's quite expensive. And then we also are putting stabilizer there, so we don't have the dust problem that we did also at Roosevelt. So the combination that would be $20,000, $18,877 for the resize and renovation, and for the stabilizer, $1,430. Going down to the park projects, Cherry Blossom Park, the fencing on the north side, which is the side of the school, is farm fencing with wires above the railing, and it's rusty, it's old, and should be replaced. We're replacing it with a black powder-coated fencing with a gate at the very bottom of the property and at the top so the children can come through to the schools. And that fence replacement is $7,285. There are stumps along that old fencing that need to be removed. There's about 10 to 12 of them, and they're being removed for $315. And then, in addition, the sprinkler system installation is $5,000, and that is so that Michelle can plant her additional plantings and bushes and not hand water them that we've done the last 3 or 4 years because there's no water there. So it's basically putting in a system that would water not only the existing planting but the new planting that Michelle wants to put in there. So that's it.
Can I ask a question? The Cherry Hill School Field, bringing it to a 50-foot radius without a mound, correct? So it could be available for other play aside from Little League.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask you just a quick question? The grass that makes the outfield, that seemed to be weed infested. Is anything going to be done about that? Is that included?
Cherry Hill?
Yeah.
Actually, that area we do not utilize. They use it for recess by the school.
Okay.
And the maintenance of that would be quite expensive because there's no water. They don't allow you to put fertilizer on. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But we, as the Recreation Commission and our programs, do not use that outer field.
Good. And I just want to make sure that was on the record.
Well,
great.
Well, can I?
No, just to your point, the Board of Education has a different opinion of that.
Okay.
And this is why we're actually in the midst of trying to renegotiate our interlocal agreement with them, because our agreement says that we're responsible for the field maintenance.
Okay.
That not being defined. At this point, it's their contention that if we use the infield, then obviously we use the outfield. And if we use the outfield, we're responsible for maintaining the grass.
Okay.
So the board would take a different position on that, and they are looking for us to improve the condition of the grass field there presently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a matter of I don't want to say negotiation, but we're working with the Board of Education to come to a better understanding as to what the expectations and obligations of both parties are going forward, not just at not just at Cherry Hill, but also at Roosevelt.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up, not the only reason. The reason I bring it up is because the council is not privy to these conversations right yet. It's a subcommittee, which is good. Is there a recommendation to put aside open space funding if that is the resolution of the subcommittee?
I don't know if we're at a point to come up with a dollar amount. I think, there's going to be remaining some unallocated funding after this evening, I would assume, and that's something we would have to keep in mind going forward.
The reason, so Alan had said earlier tonight that the law requires us to, Alan, state or itemize where we were going to spend that money. Do we need to state that, or would those funds that are unallocated be sufficient for use later on for Cherry Hill?
Not everything has to be allocated tonight or the next time. You can leave unallocated funds during the year make decisions later on. There's a section of the budget that asks us to describe in 2017 how much we're putting into what they call development of lands, and the other category is maintenance of lands. So we've done a significant amount of that tonight. We make a few decisions on recreation tonight. That's more than enough for me to complete the requirement for the budget document. And we can leave some unallocated and make decisions during the year. That's fine.
Excellent, thank you.
I also think we should be keeping some unallocated for a couple of the reasons. One is see what the final cost will be at KDG for the lights. And the other thing, and the commission has engaged an engineer to come up with a assessment of all our facilities, and maybe later on in the year there may be recommendations that we might be able to go forward with those also. So I think keeping some funds unallocated would be prudent this year.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Mayor.
Councilman?
I guess we'll talk about this later in terms of what the Board of Ed is willing to allocate towards the field program at Cherry Hill. But that also seems to be conditional on our taking an active role in maintaining the outfield as well. Just the sprinkler system at Cherry Hill, while I'm sure I definitely don't, Cherry Blossom, I'm sorry, the Cherry Blossom, don't want to see Ms. Caridi having to water everything herself. I am concerned that the borough's water bill keeps going up. This year alone, we've allocated over $40,000 for water in the borough. It's quite a bit of water that the borough is using. And so I see that keeps going up, and I'm concerned that if we add additional sprinklers, it's going to keep driving up our water bill. So can't we plant things that are drought tolerant and native plants that don't need to be watered quite as extensively, and just let nature take its course, as opposed to installing a sprinkler system over there?
Well, shouldn't we let Rec finish and then bring Michelle back up for that?
Well, Rec is asking for the allocation.
Rec's asking for the allocation.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, this is the thing we always, to a certain extent, Cherry Blossoms become nobody's land. In a sense, it's supposed to be under the auspices of Rec. The trees there are supposed to be under the auspices of the Shade Tree Commission. And it's kind of, I don't know, nobody really wants to take full ownership of it. So I guess that's my concern. We have a water bill that keeps going up. We are, as far as I know, New Jersey still in a drought. Do we need to put a sprinkler system in at this point in time? Is that a prudent use of the money, especially considering that open space is up this year for referendum, and it may not be authorized next year, and it may be prudent to leave some additional monies in those lines for 2018.
Well, is it up for debate, Mayor? Yes. I think it is a good idea. I think that Cherry Blossom has, for better or for worse, without trying to make any sort of statement or judgment about it, it became a political hot potato. It became a Democratic-Republican issue. I don't think it is that anymore. I would not want it to return to be that. However, one of the guiding principles that I act under as a councilman is if it's our property, we need to take care of it. And though I think you make an excellent point that we should plant as much as possible drought-resistant plants, I don't think that is possible for the park as currently designed. Now, we may wish to go back and redesign the park. That may be a discussion that we want to have. But as of right now, the park needs to be watered to some degree. Now, I would also concede that I think the tree farm was overwatered. greatly overwatered. And I think that that could have been part of the problem. I think we have to get control over how much the tree farm and the public park portion of Cherry Blossom is being watered. I agree with you that this is a lot of money that we're putting into water, and I think you are prudent to say that it may not be, open space may not be reestablished, but at this point, I think we should put the sprinklers in. I think we should get better control over how much water is being used, but I think having been there in Cherry Blossom when it was 95, 98 degrees, and seeing Michelle Caridi and Greg Caridi lugging, you know, water after water after water with hoses, I don't think that that's a reasonable expectation. I don't think it's sustainable. And then the other choice would be that we let the park die in the late July, early August heat. And I don't think that that's, in my opinion, where I would want to see a borough property be maintained. I think we need to do a minimum amount of watering, and that needs to be in a reasonable, sustainable fashion, and I think the sprinkler system would allow us to do that. And that would be my position.
Yes, I would just like to remind the council and the members of the public that the Recreation Commission this year, working with Michelle Caridi, has done a tremendous job in maintaining that property for the borough. They've rolled up their sleeves. They were out there with wheelbarrows and moving rocks, and I think it's important to remind the members of the council and the public that we have a volunteer organization that has met the needs of that park up to this point, and they should be thanked for that. And I would also echo Councilman Papaleo's words. That is our property. We need to maintain it. Yes, we should look for drought-resistant plants wherever we can, but I would similarly support the sprinkler system as well.
Can I make just real quick?
Go ahead.
I also don't want to take anything away from our volunteers at all. And like I said, I certainly don't want to see Michelle and her husband out there watering plants manually. I mean, in other areas, in other parks, our DPW goes around and waters things. That's one of the things we talked about with the summer help with Shade Tree, is that they have a water truck and they go around and water things. And again, this, I think, goes back to this park has in some ways become, if Michelle hadn't adopted it, it was an orphan because nobody wanted it. Shade Tree didn't want it, and for all intents and purposes, Rec didn't want it. And in fact, what I'm worried about is we keep investing money in this. I think if you add up the state, the local, the county, there's $1 million into this property already. And you have residents now who are saying, hey, can we park there? And this council wants to keep adding money to it when the residents of the town say, can't we use it for parking? So I think you need to get control over this and say the appropriate authorities need to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to a sprinkler system, as opposed to Michelle being out there watering it by hand, when our other parks are not operated that way. So I think there's definite issues there. And again, I just don't know if the sprinkler system is the right expenditure at this point.
Councilman, I would say I agree with Councilman Papaleo. The tree farm is overwatered because I believe we spent $19,000 one year watering the tree farm. To what end, we still don't know. I don't know whether, and I said this at the last budget meeting, that my perspective here is that my goal is to make sure every tax dollar we spend, we're getting value for that money. And to spend $5,000 to water a handful of trees at the Cherry Blossom Park, I don't think is the highest and best use of that money, particularly when there's other priorities which have not been explored yet. We know there's issues with the basketball court at Memorial and down at Brookside. We have money that this money can go to offset some of the debt we're accruing for the lights. So we have to ask ourselves as a council, is this the highest and best use of this money? Are we getting the value for the money? And If we had a better handle on how much water was being used, then maybe we can explore it at a future time. When we're in a situation where there's still potential drought watch, I don't know whether it makes sense to put the money in for a sprinkler system right now also. So, I'll leave it at that. That's what I think what we should be considering.
I'd like to respond to a couple of things. I think that you guys, all three of you, have made excellent points. I'd like to say a couple of things. One, from 5 years ago when I became part of this council, I am on the record of saying I would not have bought Cherry Blossom Park. I would not have voted for another passive park in the borough. An active park, that may be something different. And I've also been on the record that if this is our property, we need to take care of it, and I've said those two things. As to the idea of that Councilman Bartoloni just brought up, it was my understanding that we could not sell or change the usage of the park because of the grants we got.
No, we can't.
So to turn it into a parking lot is not an option, and if that's not correct, I'd like to.
No, that is correct.
No, that's
Yeah,
correct.
so
I
it's
brought it
not-
up simply that,
People are
to make the
asking-
point that people don't seem to want it as they're not looking to use it, is
Okay.
more my
And I understand that. I just, since we're on the record and both public present as well as public via the internet, we don't have the authority or the ability to change its usage. Because if that had been possible 5 years ago, I would have moved to sell it. But we don't have that authority, and we can't do that. I think, personally, the reason why the public has this sort of opinion of it is because we haven't finished it, because it's just so expensive. Again, I would have not voted for it, but we do have it. And the public, I think, feels that way because it is a bit of a desert on Bogart Road, and I think that alone makes it necessary for us to put a sprinkler system in, because it's not a park being used because it's basically a dry park. It's a bit of a desert on Bogart Road, and we need to whatever ability we can, within our budget constraints, getting a dollar out of a dollar of tax money, but to not provide sprinklers would just continue to leave it in such poor condition that people think it would be better off to be a parking lot. And I think that argument, that inquiry demonstrates that we need to do a little bit more in making it a park. Now, I'm sure when trees begin to grow, there'll be less need for water, and maybe only during the end of July or early August, but right now there's very little shade on that property, and it's dying because it's so parched. And I just wanted to clarify that. But I think you've made excellent points, and I don't disagree with them.
Quick
Yes.
question, I don't want to drag this on anymore. This watering truck that you're talking about, is there any possibility of that? I mean, I certainly don't want Michelle Critty watering it.
No,
However,
nor do I.
When I came on this council, I said to myself, I have to go find out where this park is, because they keep talking about it. I'm in town since, 1960. I don't know how long it's in, I had to go look for it. I went down there and I looked at it and I walked it. So I agree with you that people are not into this pocket park. However, if there's some other way that we can get it watered other than Michelle Critty, can we look into that?
That sounds like a prudent suggestion.
Well, John did not budget for it. DPW has not planned for it. As liaison to DPW, we need to then go back in the budget and put into a budget that extra, those hours that he would be using 1 or 2 men and the vehicle, because it's not a small park, and it would require weekly or bi-weekly watering, especially when we get to the last 2 weeks of July and probably the first 3 weeks of August. So it's 5 weeks. Now he has, we have increased the help he's received, but he's not planning to use it for this purpose. And I would think that this purpose would probably be twice a week for about 2 hours, from the fill-up to bringing the vehicle up to watering, and then maybe going back, filling up again returning to the site and watering, as John has explained to me, and I'm no expert on this. And I think that the sprinkler system's a better use of money. I don't think the offset year in, year out of DPW sending a truck up there is a good use of, I think we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but of course we'll vote on it.
But Councilman, we didn't allocate any increase in the water budget either. And we have no idea how much water this is going to use. So you need to go back and then amend that budget line also, because we did not include that in our.
But if we do what you've suggested, Mayor, that we have John send the water truck up, one way or another, we have to amend that water line.
That's what.
So you don't think we should water it at all?
No, not a priority. When I think we still have issues with KBG Field, where we have groups that say it's not playable, where we have broken tennis courts, we have other things we should be prioritizing on. I don't think this is a priority this year.
Well, I respectfully disagree, and I understand your point.
And with regard to the fence, we repaired the section that the Board of Ed had asked us to repair. And in my speaking with them, they're completely content with the status of the fence it is now. So I would not be in favor of replacing the fence at this time either.
Which fence are we speaking of? The one up by the baseball field or the one by the park?
The park fence, the north side. Because the Board of Education asked us to repair one section, which we did.
I have no problem with that. It's safe.
That was their position.
How much is the fence in the overall request?
Almost
285.
Bobby, what would be your opinion about the fence? Do you think it's safe?
It's a farm fence that has wires above the top railing. These are crossed wires all the way across the top of that fencing, which can be a hazard to children trying to climb over it. Yes, we've been saying that from the very beginning. It's an old farm fence to keep crows off of it. There's wires, there are cross wires all along the very top of that railing.
Well, that doesn't sound safe to me at all.
What year did we buy that park?
It is not safe. I believe, I understand what you're saying. The section that was repaired was repaired because it was opened by DPW to get in equipment in there. It was repaired. I understand. There's this small section at the end. The rest of the fence, as far as I'm concerned, is a safety hazard.
Then the commission should state that, because when this first came up, it was proffered to me that the Board of Education was concerned about the safety of the fence. When I asked them what their concern was, they asked me to close that one section. And I asked if that's all they wanted. They said that's all the Board of Ed wanted. So if the commission wants to do it separately, then you can certainly say that's priority for the commission. But I'll say, like I said other years, for all the things we have going on with the parks, I don't know why this particular park always seems to come to the top rises to the top every time the open space comes around. Well, we have all those other pressing issues we talked about with other parks, and Cherry Blossom always seems to be the one that seems to be the commission's priority. If that's the commission's priority, so be it. That you're a semi-autonomous body. But I don't want to hear problems that we can't have people play down KBG because it's slanted or it doesn't drain, or we have other issues with broken basketball courts. And then tell me that $5,000 for sprinklers and then $10,000 for fence is the #1 priority of our Recreation Commission. So, but if that's what the commission says, then the council can take that under advisement.
May I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Bob, is there a way that we could fix the fence without replacing the entire thing?
It's a rusty old fence. Rusty, the whole area, all the way down, all the way to where it was repaired, is a rusty old fence. So repairing it, I'm not exactly sure how you would repair a rusty old fence.
Well, the danger comes from the spikes on top to keep the birds down, right?
It's also rusty. It's probably put in, from the quote I got from AAA fencing was that, he said that fence was there before the school was built. That's how old it is. And it also is unsightly, and I believe it's a danger to the children because of those wiring.
Let me clarify another point. When the commission had the opportunity to include that in an improvement project, they took it out last time when we did the phase 1 improvements. When the budget came too high and they had to scope down the project, they removed the fence as a bid item. So if it was a priority then, it would have been addressed at that point. So we bought this field this property probably in 2008 or 9, I'm guessing. So, you know, I'm not saying that it eventually should not be, but I'm saying I don't know if it's a priority and like I said, the highest and best use of our taxpayer money at this point.
One more question, has any child gotten hurt in the past 10 years on this fence?
We haven't reported it, but to be very honest with you, as far as I'm concerned and the commission is concerned, it's something that should be replaced. It's not only unsightly, but it's unsafe. And whether a child tries to climb over it, they would be hurt by trying to climb over it.
And maybe it should be removed and not replaced.
Well, that would be an issue with the school board because they want a fence.
Well, then the school can certainly put a fence on their property. We're not obligated to put a fence on our property.
Well, we could do that. It's, we could take it down and take the stumps out and keep it open.
But I don't think that's what the school wants, because the reason they wanted it closed, they didn't want people crossing over into Cherry Hills.
But, Mayor, the school has their own budget. And, you know, and you and I have talked about this. They have their own budget. I think you're right. They want to put up a fence, they can put up a fence. I would be willing to leave money in to have the fence removed. I think that that's acceptable. And if the school wishes to put a fence up, I don't think we'd object.
I wouldn't have an objection to that, but the condition would have to be that we'd have to be in council with the school, because I'm not looking to get into an argument with them if we take it down and they don't want it down, or we're gonna make them put a fence up, or whatever. It's coming to, you know, we're in the midst of working with them on a host of various improvements at both fields, and, yeah, I'm not looking to make anything adversarial, particularly over a fence.
Well, then, again, the council's not privy to these conversations, as they shouldn't, because they're negotiations. But since that's the case, I think what we do is leave the rec budget as it is, with the understanding that the council would prefer that the fence come down. But if that becomes an issue for the Board of Education, and you, Mayor, as one of the principal negotiators with the board, wants to put that up, and then you would have some flexibility whether it would come from rec or come from the board. But one way or another, that fence should come down immediately if it's unsafe. And then whether we're going to replace it or the board's going to replace it might be something that the mayor and his committee can negotiate, hopefully before the summer's over. So my feeling is we leave the rec's budget as is, with the hope that someone will put a fence there, but if not, better to remove a dangerous eyesore, I've been there, than to leave it up.
I just have one additional, I guess.
I'd like you, Councilman Preston.
Sorry.
Right.
Thanks.
I want to make sure for the benefit of the council and the public as well, that the rec commission is not ignoring any improvements or repairs that may have to happen to the basketball courts or the hockey fields. In all due respect, Mayor, the impression I think you may be leaving with some people is that they are not considering those projects, and they're not on their radar, and they do not have a plan for those improvements, because they do. Whether it's happening now or it's happening down the road, they're certainly not ignoring the need.
What I'm saying, it's about priority setting. That's my point. So
We have
if we
funding
have,
for the basketball court repair in open space in 2015. We set it aside for that repair. We're looking at a total renovation to see what it would cost for that to renovate or to repair. And we are working on it. We have $21,000 towards that court. So we are working on it. And so you're absolutely right. We're not ignoring other projects because of a $7,500 fence removal and renovation.
but what I'm saying, and to Councilman Bartolone's point, is that when this goes to referendum again this year, and the general public is looking as to what we're funding through this, there was a lot of discussion and debate, and I'll say even some misinformation the first time around about how this money was allocated. And if I want this to be renewed, I think it's a very valuable policy, and I think it's a very good source of revenue to get us to do things which we may not be able to fund normally. But I want to be able to go out and say that when we spend this money, these are the key projects we're doing, these are the priorities that we're addressing, and some of these are, frankly, it's very hard for me to argue our priorities at this point. So that's my personal opinion, and I respectfully disagree with you on some of them, agree with you on others, so, you know, that's the way, these things go. Yes, Councilman.
Just a couple of things. The mayor's correct in that we're kind of operating in the blind. I think we're anxiously awaiting your annual report regarding the Rec Commission's priorities and where they're going and what their plan is. So we are looking forward to receiving that, so we have some idea as to what your long-term projections are and where you're going to prioritize. We haven't received that yet, so to that extent, we are somewhat in the blind. To my second point, just to the council, is that now we have our Rec Commission and our Rec Director saying that it's a dangerous condition that exists, and there's going to be some lawyer, you know, God forbid a child got hurt, there's going to be some lawyer, those damn dirty lawyers, are going to, I am one of those damn dirty lawyers, is going to say, is going to get these minutes, going to hear it, that we were aware of a dangerous condition and we failed to deal with the problem.
Well, that's
So
why I
when
think
we
we
have-
should remove it as soon as the budget gets approved.
Well, so that's why, with that on record, we have to take, I think we have to now at this point, take action to either remove it or replace it or whatever, but definitely it has to be, the danger has to, you know, be taken care of.
Well, that's true, but let's also remember the Rec Commission is not an expert on public safety. They're making a subjective determination, not an objective determination as an expert witness.
I understand that they're not, but play this recording to a jury.
Okay, but we're going to take it down since we approved it.
So, you know, I would just caution for future in terms of that type of language, but, you know, having already been said, I think we have to allocate the money towards at least the removal of the fencing at this point.
Removal.
At least, I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm not saying not replace, I'm just saying at
Well,
least.
no, Mr. Lynch will remove the fence if we so direct him to. And no cost.
Can I just touch upon your question about our long-term goals and plan? We have contracted with Major Engineering for that. We've spent numerous hours going around to all of our parks, Bobby, myself, and Major representatives. We have gone around to all of our parks. We've looked at all the things. We actually just had a meeting with them this past week, and they're actually putting together our plans to go over with us and obviously with the council for safety issues and all of our projects, everything that we want to do. So we absolutely are moving forward on all those things. The things that we brought forward today are the things that we've gotten to this point where we feel that we need to do that. Long-term projects, absolutely. We want to make this look good because we do want these monies to happen in the future. But we have to hit all these parks. Nobody wants Cherry Blossom Park. We understand that. We're taking care of it as best as we can because we have it. You know, it is ours and we need to make it look good. Michelle and Greg and Bobby and I, you know, obviously we haven't put the hours that they did, but we've been down there, you know, lugging boulders, moving things and everything, and it's part of our town. We care about it, and we need to make sure that it is maintained. All the work that we've put into it already, we don't want it to disappear and not work well. I believe if we go with the idea of using a truck to water things, we're going to damage the surface of that ground because it's not meant for vehicle traffic at all. So we have to look into that as well. But if we just let the thing fall apart, we're going to be, and we don't want to do this, but we're going to be coming to you in a couple of years saying, we now have a mess that we have to fix because we didn't take care of it right. We have to find a common ground where, you know, we're stuck with it. And we want to make it the best that we can and make it look good and you know, make it part of that beautiful look of Cherry Hill. That fence is an absolute eyesore. It looks horrible. My children aren't going to school there anymore, but, you know, I walk to that school, I look at that fence, it is a rusted old fence, absolutely. It either needs to come down or needs to be replaced, but we have to get there. You know, and I just think it's a shame that this goes back and forth with this over the Cherry Blossom Park, but we do have to preserve what we've already done there.
We spent $177,000 on phase one. We should have replaced the fence then. That's my point. And we didn't fix the broken macadam at the time either, as I suggested. I was against the project, freely admitted. But when it came in too high and you started having to cut things from that scope, those are things you should not have cut. And then don't come back now 2 years later and say, well, now these are priorities, we have to fix these safety issues, because we had the opportunity, it should have been done then. And to keep putting more money, hand over fist, into the park, which no matter, I don't know how many plantings and trees you're gonna put there, it's not gonna attract more people to go there. It looks nice, we certainly wanna see it look nice, we don't want it to look like a, you know, an overgrown vacant lot. But again, you're talking about right now, you know, $12,000 for something which I don't see as a priority at this point, so. Councilman, did you want to speak anything else?
Yeah, I mean, if we're dealing with rec, I don't know if it would come under rec's budget or whatnot, but we've been having discussions with the Board of Education regarding replacement of a shed at Roosevelt and some batting cages. We've gotten at least somewhat tacit approval from the Board of Education for those two items. They want to have
approval in concept.
In concept, yes.
More
That's
than
why I said
tacit
tacit.
approval.
Well,
It's
they want
in concept.
some final where it'll be and, you know, and things like that. And the shed project originally, I guess, originated with a request from Regal for it, but the Board of Ed has made very clear that if a shed is allowed, they do not want it to be used exclusively for Regal, that it has to be a borough item. The shed, as proposed, had a cost of about $10,000. The batting cage had an additional cost, I think, of about $2,500. So I would like to see those two costs added to the open space, that I think those are worthwhile projects that should be used by in the open space fund.
You got a motion, or do you want to?
I would make that motion.
Shall we address that
Second.
first?
Can we just share some context, share some context?
No, we're not a motion yet. Withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Just to share some context with the request, and my context is not I'm not saying I support or I don't support it, but this, the Regal organization had agreed to participate in the funding of that item, and what I think you're suggesting now is to not have them participate in the funding of that item and have it be
That's correct.
solely funded by open space.
Why is that?
That's because the Board of Ed has made it very clear that it cannot be used exclusively for Regal, that any other borough organization has to use it.
The borough can, the Board of Ed cannot, or I guess they could enter into a separate agreement with Regal, but that's not what they want to do. It's a borough, it's the borough who has an agreement with them. Any asset would be a borough asset, and to their point is that they want, if it's going to be a borough asset, then it should be open to any borough league or borough participant who wants to use it. It can't be limited to one specific league. And I've said this I said this in front of the Rec Commission. I said we need to get away from saying this is Regal's, this is Little League, this is this. It's all the borough River Edges. It's not Little League field, it's River Edges fields. And the Cherry Hill and the Roosevelt fields, we ask for specific permission to use them for rec activities, and the Board of Ed lets us use them. So I think we have to heed their request that they think that any improvements made are made by and of the borough, not by third parties.
Well, I don't, part of this problem is, it's very hard for myself as a councilman, not as council president, just as a councilman, to be dealing with this sort of issue when it's part of a negotiation that I and other members of the council are not privy to. So it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. And here we have Regal wishing to give us money for such an improvement, but and you spoke rightly that we have to get you know, taxpayers should get, you know, the best of the best, but, you know, a dollar out of a dollar, and now you're saying we're going to refuse the money from Regal and put it completely on the burden of the taxpayer. And that might be a great idea. That might be the perfect solution. But I don't know, because I don't know any part of this discussion. In addition to that, the Board of Education is a co-municipal entity, and I have great respect for them. I'm a teacher. I think that's great. But we are also subsidizing their budget to some degree by plowing their school lot. Now, I teach in Teaneck Public Schools. Teaneck plows its own lot. But this is also something that's part of negotiation. So my frustration is I don't know how to vote on something like this because I don't know all the pieces, because the pieces are mostly hidden. And I have the greatest confidence in you, Ed and Al, but I'm expressing a frustration over a fence for Cherry Hill is too much of a burden on the public, but putting in a $12,000 shed because the board wants it and the board should get what it wants is okay for us to do with taxpayer dollars. I'm not saying you're wrong about it. If I was privy to these conversations, I might be saying, wow, this is a phenomenal idea. But it's very hard for me to vote in a clear conscience about how one thing is highly inappropriate and the other thing is highly appropriate when I'm in the dark. And whatever you could do to alleviate some of this frustration, I would be greatly appreciative.
Yes, I didn't say that Regal shouldn't contribute if they didn't want to. What I'm saying is that the Board of Education does not want an asset owned by a third party on their property. So if it were in theory purchased by Regal for Regal's exclusive use, then any other rec group who's using that field would not be able to store or have access to the equipment that's going to be in there.
But doesn't Regal use 90% of that field? Isn't it an extraordinarily majority?
No, that's not true.
Except, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Except the Blackhawk Soccer, which is not part of our recreation program, utilizes the field in the fall.
And that's Riverdale.
That's Riverdale Blackhawks, it's Blackhawks Club Soccer. It's not under our CAC youth organization.
But Riverdale Blackhawks is under the auspices of the Riverdale Soccer Association.
They're not part of CAC.
But they're under the auspices of the Riverdale Soccer Association, are they not?
Yes, they are.
And that is part of the CAC.
The coaches, are the coaches favorite vendors?
The coaches, we do not cover their insurance. They do not use our borough field. We do not get their coach list and with their requirements. They are a separate entity. They're not part of CAC at this point. So that's what I'm saying. It's not our recreation program. The Regal does use it from April until August.
Mm-hmm. You do. But, and I understand that, see, this is, for the life of me, Mayor, honestly, I racked my head on this for the better part of a year now. Because it just seems I come up against opposition. When you ask for money for Regal, it seems like there's opposition. And for the life of me, I don't understand it. We had two proclamations on today. One for Women's History Month and one for Girl Scouts. But when it comes to our girls and their sports, we keep getting opposition. This should be something that should just be a no-brainer. It should be something where you say, Regal would like this. By God, let's do something for our girls. And it's just the opposite. And I can't fathom it. I stay awake at night and I go, what am I missing? What am I missing? It seems like a no-brainer. We have, we have marches across the country. And we have commercials. It was a great commercial. I think it was Audi at the Super Bowl, where his dad is with his daughter, and they're talking about, she's doing a soapbox derby.
I get that, but where do you go with this?
Well, I'm going with it is that it's perfectly fine to ask for $7,600 for bathroom doors. It's perfectly acceptable last year in open space to ask for, $6,000 for fence repair at Little League, $10,000 for dugouts, and $7,200 for benches. But if you ask for any money for Regal, you're told no. No, let Regal pay for it. So I don't understand it.
No,
I
I'm
don't
not
understand.
against it, I'm not against
Well,
it.
you kind of were like,
No, I don't
get
get it. I don't get it because I'm missing information why we are paying for this. Now, if Regal wishes to donate to that shed, I have no problem with it.
Exactly, that's
But,
my point.
but that wasn't the way it was presented.
Because I didn't get a chance to articulate that, but that's not, that's up to whatever we're allowed to do. And what we're-
Would then
and whether they can
Riverdale-
waive their, can they give permission for everybody to use, those are.
Would Riverdale, who's not covered under our insurance, and we don't have any evidence that they have gone through the proper training and stuff like that, would they be given keys to that shed? And if so, how would the equipment that Regal is keeping in the shed be secured? And that's the question that I wonder now. And again, the only reason I'm wondering about is because
Yes.
it's coming up now.
For the large part, that's what we're
It's
talking
rakes, shovels, and clay, that's what we're talking about being stored in the shed.
for the most part, yes.
Can't we come to some type of a compromise with a donation from Regal if they wish to make one? And it portion
That would be great.
I think that's fine, but I'm saying, by the end of the day, the borough has to be the proactive actor in this, according to the Board of Education. So Regal can't,
Well, that's because the Board of Education doesn't want to enter into an agreement with Regal. They want to only enter an agreement with us. And that's a choice they've made.
yes, but that's the way our agreements have always been.
Okay.
But we still
Well,
have an
that
open
helps.
space discussion here that we can maybe move forward on this open
I
space
agree.
discussion, because the proposal that the Board of Ed has come to us with is a separate subcommittee issue. Can we
Yeah.
move on
Yes.
this?
Well, I'd still like to add, because we're doing
Well,
this.
let's address the rec first, and then we
Okay.
can always add that, because it's not going to be on, first of all, I don't believe the commission has any authority over the school fields anyway.
No, that's correct.
So if the borough is going to make any improvements, the borough has to make the improvements.
So do we need a motion to,
Yeah, I want some sort of motion for the 4 current items.
I would,
Maybe we'll do them individually. Let's start with the park maintenance, 11,820.
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The field maintenance, $24,509. That was spring field maintenance, beam clay, stabilizer conditioner, and sprinkler system winterization repair replacement for Little League, KBG, and Memorial Garden.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Maintenance field projects. It was $27,907. That was the $7,600 for the bathroom doors at Little League, and the $18,887 for resizing the infield at Cherry Hill and the field stabilizer for $1,430.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Park projects. $12,600, which consisted of $315 for stump removal, $72.85 for fence replacement, and $5,000 for sprinklers at Cherry Blossom Park.
So moved.
Wait. I would agree to removing the fence if the council would give some sort of consent that we direct John Lynch to remove the fence. So I've used the word twice. I would agree to reduce that item by the amount of the replacement fence if it is the council's desire and intention later on tonight to direct John to remove the 7,000-year-old fence.
I think we will ask John, unless there's something unforeseen where he wouldn't be able to do it, which I can't think of at this time. So I would think that would be.
So what would be the new amount for that?
$53.15.
Well,
you
stump
comfortable
removal
with that?
can,
I think we should leave the stump removal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should come out of this budget. I think it's a good idea for it to come out of this budget.
So 5,315.
I would support that modification.
All right, so, do you want to make that motion? I'll make it?
Sure, I would make, you can make it, go ahead.
So I would make a motion to modify this item. What would its new amount be?
Well, it's the sprinkler and the stump removal, $5,350.
I'd make a motion for $5,315 for stump removal and for the sprinkler system
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Any other-
I just think it should be the opposite way, but that's
Yeah.
just me.
I know.
Are you yes or no?
No. I'm opposed.
Roll call then, please.
Councilman Manning?
No.
Councilwoman Lucy?
Yes.
Councilman Canito?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
No.
And Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Any others, Mayor? Councilman wanted to add the other thing.
I did as a, I guess, a compromise position, then, well, because it seems to be that,
But I just made a compromise position, you guys voted against it. We could have left the fence in, we didn't,
this is a
and,
separate,
okay.
separate issue. One
I'm
is
just
the-
saying that,
Well, I think one has nothing to do with
I don't
the
think
other.
you guys acted in good faith, but fine.
Listen, I don't think just on that point, I don't think the sprinklers are worth it. I think if you're gonna do anything, leave the money in for the fence, take it down, put a fence up, so that you don't have the issue of people, they didn't want teachers crossing and children crossing against, people's private property, and they wanted to maintain, kids not going into the park. So, to that extent, I would have left the sprinklers alone, because now you just added whatever the water cost is gonna be. Plus, if you look, it's cost $1,000 a sprinkler system to winterize them and set them up every year. So you're gonna have that cost every year going forward. So I would have left that alone, put the fence up. But that's just me, and that's why I didn't agree with your compromise. I would have compromised the amount just in a different way. But this is, I would put $10,000 in open space for purposes of a shed and leave the batting cage alone. If Regal wants to do that, then let Regal do that, because that basically would have usage only by them, so.
Wouldn't you face the same problems, though,
What's that?
with,
We would have to purchase it, and I don't know how Regal, and maybe Tom.
well, with the Board of Education needing to approve the fact that
They have.
only Regal would use?
They've said okay with that.
Okay.
The shed, they were concerned that other groups would come along and each want their own shed.
What precisely will the shed encompass?
What do you mean?
Is it just a storage shed? Is there going to be a place for the girls to be able to sell chocolate bars and
No,
Gatorades?
the Board of Ed is, said they would not okay that usage.
So the whole purpose is just to store clay and rakes?
Largely, it would also store materials, from what I understand, at least right now. Some of Regal's materials are stored in Memorial Park. They have to go and get Bobby every time they want some of their stuff. Future would also, they want a tractor so that they could rake their own fields, and they obviously don't have a place that could store something like that at this point.
Has there been any mention as to a snack stand over there?
There was, and the Board of Ed would not okay food being sold out of a snack stand.
Was there a reason for that?
They were worried about garbage and the neighbors' complaints, and I guess maybe rodents or something like that.
Well, I guess my issue is, it seems that the boys' sports in town have ways of making revenue, generating money from the snack sales and so forth on a nice spring day. I'm sure that's quite substantial. The girls don't have any chance to do that. How is that just, fair, and equal?
It's, to answer your question, it's not. It's not just fair or equal. Their proposal was for it to be a snack stand, for goods to be sold out of there, because you're right, the Little League has had the benefit of raising revenue from their snack stand, from advertising along the outfield walls, and that's something that Regal has not had. But they have, the Board of Ed has approved the concept of the shed that was originally proposed, but they've said, at least at this point, they don't want sales going out of the shed, but they have said that Regal could set up, I guess, a temporary sort of tent or something like that to sell food out of, and they wouldn't oppose that.
Can I just ask a question about that? We received, we had our interlocal agreement meetings that we've had, and we made a request of them about the shed and the batting cages, which we think is a great idea, and Mr. Crowline presented and Councilman presented a very nice packet that we provided with them at that meeting, which was excellent. They did a really nice job. Requesting that this would be used as a snack stand, but not to be used as a snack stand like they have in Little League hot dogs and running water and things like that, you know, stuff that they could bring in at the time, use it for the day and whatever, which sounds like a great idea. In their response to us, we didn't get anything about a tent or anything. My opinion, speaking as the chairman for the commission, is that I don't think we want to agree to anything at this point right now, because you're not getting what you want. I think we want to go back and try to negotiate with them and give them our ideas and as why we want to get exactly that with a snack stand. Exactly what you just said there.
With respect, Commissioner, the initial request did not include a snack stand. When we started the discussions with the Board of Ed, it was a shed, and it was the batting cages, and that was what we said to them in good faith. They responded good faith back to let us do this, and if we're not at the position now where we should be changing the conditions at this point, because this is what the board has said to us. It is not our field. I've said perfectly publicly and at the Rec Commission. We have a field down at KBG nobody seems to want to use that has stack stand ability and everything else that Regal certainly would be entitled to use. And I'm telling them there's either no field time, or I said the field is on level, or now we're getting lights, so it should be safe because of lights. But again, if there's improvements to be made, that's where they should be made. That's a borough field. The Board of Ed can after whatever term we agree to on this current agreement, once that's over, they can say, okay, we don't want you here anymore. We're using the field for something else. It's not our field. It's not our asset, and we shouldn't be thinking as if it is our property for forever. So whatever accommodation we get from the board now, I think we should respectfully appreciate and accept what they've offered at this time. And if they're amenable to letting it be a snack stand in the future, then that's subject to further discussions with the board. But as of now, this is what we asked for. This is what they gave us. And I think that we've acted in good faith, and so have they.
Mr. Mayor, if we go back and ask something else, is there a danger that they're going to pull out of the shed?
They've said no, yes. They've already said they do not want to use snack stand.
The shed as proposed, maybe if they realize that we're good tenants, that Regal is a good tenant, which they have been for years.
Been terrific tenants.
But if we sell, or Regal sells food out of a tent, then perhaps they'll change their position and the structure will be able to accommodate that.
Well, Regal has sold food in the past at these fields on numerous occasions, and then afterwards volunteers have cleaned everything up and made sure everything was spick and span. It would seem to me that there's more of a danger that there's going to be garbage left when there's a temporary situation where people are not used to doing the cleanup and so forth, rather than when there's a permanent situation, and part of the duties of whoever is opening up and closing up the snack stand is to make sure that the garbage is taken care of, there's nothing in the field, and everything is clean. It seems to me that this would be something that would be beneficial to the town of River Edge, to the Board of Education, and to everybody involved. So I'm not quite sure where the opposition is coming from.
You're preaching to the choir right here, as of right now, that seems to be their position. I don't fully get it. I don't know if they need more of a, again, to see how it works out and go from there. I don't know if they don't want to move too quickly, too soon, but that's, at this point I wouldn't want to, negotiate, reopen negotiations on the issue. But rather leave it alone and continue to move forward on a more global scale as we continue our negotiations on some of the other items that we had presented, Regal had presented regarding improvements that they would like to see made. So.
And I'll just say for myself, for the 6 years I've been up here, we have not had the level of cooperation with the Board of Education that we've had this year. And I will take credit for meeting that. And to establish such a good working relationship takes a lot of patience, a lot of time, and you have to build good faith on both sides, because it hadn't been there in the past. So, and as I'd say, that Councilman Bastido, her efforts have been well documented and well respected. Councilman Bartolone is in this process as well. But remember, we're asking to be guests on their property. We're not entitled to it, even though it's quote unquote still the borough. We're not entitled to it. And I think that the fact that we're coming to some positive step forwards on this and other matters, I think we should be happy with the progress we're making and work towards more progress, because nothing is worse for negotiating and say, well, we got this now, and then say, oh, by the way, now we want this too. So I think it's something that they haven't shut the door on completely. I think it's something that this is where they stand right now, and I'm not sure how much this discussion helped everything, but hopefully they'll understand that we have to discuss these things publicly, because that's where we are tonight with it. So.
Should I make the motion to add the 10,000? I think I did several times.
No, it never got seconded.
I know, it never got seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, that's all we have for tonight, unless there's something else.
What's the total, Alan?
$123,086 be awarded, and there will still be some a little over $20,000 unallocated.
And it looks fairly certain we will be getting that $30,000 allocation from the Bergen County Open Space towards KBG also. Which I think we already paid for, or we had the match already set aside for in last year's budget.
Just while we have the commission here, how are we doing with the lights?
I was going to report and
Oh,
pass
okay.
comments, but no, but by all
Sorry.
means, Bobby, you're here.
Let's see, the old lights are down, the 31 pilings have been in place. They're excavating around those pilings and putting in the concrete platforms, and we have 2 done, and they're on the 3rd. And we have 5 more to go. They're moving right along.
Awesome.
Excellent company that we're dealing with, they're very professional, and we're very pleased with them. We're looking at mid-March.
Have we received any type of change orders or anything like that?
Nothing, no.
I would expect it.
I'm just-
Maybe a portion of it.
Just making sure.
We're not allowing that to happen.
Awesome. Good job.
You guys do a great job. Thanks for the ranking. To you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Would any member of the public like to speak on any of the various items that we had just discussed with regard to open space? Because our public hearing is still, yes, Michelle, please.
Michelle Curdy, 194 Main Avenue.
Can you speak louder so we get you on the,
I just would like to say that we can't forget about the history of Cherry Blossom Park, okay? It was put to the taxpayer prior to it becoming a park, whether they wanted to purchase the land to make it a parking lot. And the taxpayers said no. That's our park. Like Mr. Cavallero said, it is our park, it's our responsibility. 30 years from now, when we're not all here, and there is an area of green grass that is full of beauty, and people can go there and have a little bit of peace. It will make all the difference in the world as to what you do tonight. As far as the sprinkler system, could we not absolutely need it? I mean, could we do without it? Absolutely. But it's just a way of saving time and energy. It's an easier way of doing things. And I have to say one thing. The DPW last summer, it wasn't every day, it was at least 3 or 4 times a week, would go and water a patch of ground right by Route 4, which was a huge plot of dirt that had flowers on it. Nobody questioned that. Nobody said, why are we wasting water on that? All I'm saying is, the trees that are there now in Cherry Blossom Park and the bushes, as you may know or not know, when something is small like that for the first 2 years or so, you need to water it, otherwise it will not survive. Yes, we will be planting things in that park that will need water and don't need water. But nothing on the God's green earth doesn't need water. And at some point, you know, especially with the weather. So I just wanted to say that. I want that to be
Thank you, Michelle. I also want to tell you that Councilman Bartolome intends to be on this council in 30 years from now. That's what he said.
No, I just meant in town and alive. That was.
Using Cherry Blossom Park.
I just wanted to be in town and alive in 30 years. That's what I was saying.
I think you're right, Michelle, and thank you for reminding us that it was put to the town, whether they wanted a parking lot or not. I actually did not remember that, so it's good that you brought that back up and put that to the record.
But let's recall, the price that they wanted to sell it to the school district was close to $900,000, and we bought it for $450,000. So had the $450,000 been offered as a referendum, we don't know how that would have went. So that's.
What would you have so close to the school? What would you put there? This was a whole other issue. What would you put right next to a school?
It never should have been subdivided in the first place. That was the answer. It was part of the church. It's an R1 lot. All the misinformation that it was going to be apartment buildings or whatever, that was pure speculation. It's zoned for residential, single-family house, that was there. You know, so anything otherwise is pure speculation and would never even pass any legal bearing, let alone political support to do anything more there. But the answer was that it never should have been subdivided. The church wanted to sell off the property, and that was it. So yes,
Right.
but let's put it in context. So 900,000 versus the 450. If we had told the taxpayers we would have $1 million into that park right now, I don't know whether they would think that would be a good idea either. So we have it. That's correct. We don't want it to see become a wasteland. It's our responsibility forever because of the restriction, and it restricted all our properties because of that, the encumbrances of the Green Acres. So it spreads more than just that one parcel. It makes it very difficult for us to do anything with regard to any parks.
I just want to say to Michelle, the arguing over that has nothing to do with
No, certainly not.
of what you do
Yes,
for this
no one
town.
ever refutes that.
Absolutely. I know. Right.
But
Thank you, Michelle.
$19,000 more. I would hope that we'll put a meter on this time so we can actually keep track of the water quality. Both the park and for that tree farm.
But that water bill is for everything that DPW uses for water. That was
What's the whole town's?
Yes,
the whole town.
But when it went up 19,000 was the year we did the tree farm.
Well, the
That
tree
was
farm
the increase
was
to the
completely
tree farm.
overwatered, and I think everybody was.
Yeah,
willing
but
to
nothing's
admit that.
changed there, so it's going to be the same amount of watering.
Well, I'm going to talk to John about that, to see if, I assume it's on a timer, I don't actually know, and we're going to see if we can't have a more reasonable watering. I mean, first of all, they're not saplings anymore, so they don't need the same amount of water that they did. And hopefully that amount will come down markedly, but we won't know until we do it.
Did any member of the public have any more comments on the open space allocations? If not, can I have a motion to close, please?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, Alan, we need to open it for a public hearing
Yeah, I would see if there are comments about the renewal.
this is for the borough has to take action to put the renewal of the open space trust fund on the ballot for November, so this is an opportunity for the public to make comment on that. Can I have a motion to open, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would any member of the public like to make any comments regarding whether the borough should or should not proceed with listing the renewal of the open space trust account on November's ballot? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we motion now on that?
No.
All right. We have three ordinances on for first reading tonight. Ordinance 17-7, Madam Clerk, please read by title.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 1454, creating and establishing the River Edge Beautification Committee.
This is a amendment to the enabling ordinance that was requested by the Beautification Committee to lower the number of quorum required from 8 to 5. I think obviously, it's at their recommendation. It'll help them conduct business easier, so I think it's a warranted amendment. Can I please have a motion to
So moved.
adopt?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Ballmer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve? Yes. Councilman Domingo?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Papalayo?
Yes.
And there'll be a public hearing at a later council meeting. Ordinance 17-8, Madam Clerk, please read by title.
An ordinance authorizing an emergency appropriation, NJSA 40A:4.
Okay, this is, it's more of almost become a routine, appropriation we do every year. It's, for the preparation, revision, and codification of our borough ordinances. Alan, do you know what the amount is?
The amount is $3,400, and the repayment can be spread over 5 years.
Can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 17-8 by title in first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Maloney?
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve? Yes. Councilman Domingo?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Papalayo?
Correct, yes.
And again, that will be listed for a public hearing at a future council meeting. Ordinance 17-9, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 17-2 to fix the salary, wage, and compensation of the officers and employees of the Borough of River Edge in the County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, for the year 2017.
And this is to amend our 2017 salary ordinance to reflect increases in the minimum wage. That's all. Any questions? Motion to adopt on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Maloney?
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve? Yes. Councilman Domingo?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
And Councilman Papalayo?
Yes.
I'm going to skip the next one momentarily and go to ordinance 17-6, public hearing. First, please read ordinance 17-6. No, ordinance 17-6 by title, please.
An ordinance to extend the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A:4-45.14 for the calendar year 2017.
And this was ordinance that we passed on first reading. It's a procedural ordinance for us to establish a cap bank. The state of New Jersey has offered the towns, as you know, we're imposed two different caps, one on appropriation at 2% and one on our tax levy by 2%. But this year, because of the calculations, the way the state does it, they said that 2% really is a 2% of appropriation. It's either a 0.5% or you can adopt a cap bank and go up to 3.5%. Well, as hard as we tried, we did not be able to keep appropriation to a 0.5% increase. We were introducing our budget tonight, which I believe was, how much, Alan? But it was not quite a 0.5%. So we need to utilize this cap bank to comply with and submit a legal budget to the state.
0.75%.
So we were close. Our 2017 budget is 0.75% higher than last year, so we almost did it. So, but anyway, we still need to do this procedurally, and we adopted our first reading, and now we're having a public hearing. So can I have a motion to open to the public on this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would any member of the public like to comment or ask a question regarding ordinance 17-6, the cap bank? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close, please?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 17-6?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilman Maloney?
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve?
Yes.
Councilman Domingo?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Papalayo?
Yes.
Okay. And then we're gonna go to public hearing on ordinance 17-4, and I'm gonna ask Councilman Papalino to oversee this part of the meeting. Thank you.
Tom, can I do it from this seat?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll wait until Councilman Barnwell adjourns.
Would you like to take a formal recess for a minute?
Okay, we'll take a formal 3 to 5 minute recess for those of you, so let's make that a real 5 minutes. So I call back into session the River Edge Borough Council regular meeting. We have before us ordinance, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Councilman Apofeo is out this evening. Councilman Barnwell.
Here.
Councilwoman Dees.
Here.
Councilman Domingo.
Here.
Councilwoman Days has recused herself. Councilman Papaleo.
Here.
And Mayor Young has also recused himself.
We have ordinance 17-4 before us. Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance?
17-4, an ordinance amending an ordinance entitled Police Department of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Riverhead, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey.
Can I have a motion to open, first of all, this is an amendment to the police table of organization. The current table of organization is 1 chief, 1 captain, 2 lieutenants, 5 sergeants, and 17 police officers. Is that not correct? And we are suggesting that the ordinance before us is to change it to 1 chief, 0 captains, 3 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, and 17 officers.
Increasing, I understand, 1 police officer, currently 16, you're going to 17 on that.
That's what we had already done that. All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
This
so we
is
are
the
also...
table that you're voting on. so
Yes.
whatever.
So, can I have a motion to open for public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So it is now open for public hearing. Any member of the public who wishes to make a comment, please feel free to come forward, give your name and address for the record, and make your statement. Joe Timonese, would you come forward, give your name again and address?
Joe Zemedy here, representing on behalf of the PDA Local 201, along with Patrick Diamond, the Vice President. Just 2 letters I wanted to read into the record that I received from people who could not be here this evening. One, I know he said he sent it to all of you, so I just wanted to, again, put it into the record. It was from a Robert Smith from Lakeview Street. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm writing to express my support for the officers of River Edge Police Department in their effort to fill the position of captain. I've been a resident of River Edge for 19 years, have a great respect for the River Edge Police Department. They've been very professional, perform their duties in an exemplary manner. They provide the best possible services to the community. I am a federal officer with 26 years of service and currently serve in the position of Lieutenant/Corps Commander. My responsibilities include, but are not limited to, commanding 15 officers, scheduling post assignments, in-service training, assigning special details, etc. There have been many times over the years I would seek the guidance of the captain, especially in the absence of the chief. The position of captain is vital to managing the operations, supporting the chief, while the lieutenant's position is to manage the assigned tour of duty. I know very well that if the position of captain wasn't filled within my department, my workload would be overwhelming. In the event the chief is unable or unavailable to perform his duties, the captain can step in seamlessly. Creating a position of administrative sergeant or a lieutenant's position that will most likely not be filled is unacceptable to the residents of this community. There are many unforeseen issues that arise on a regular basis, and the community deserves a police department that is properly staffed and led. It can only be done when the captain's position is filled soon. I support the position of captain to be filled with someone within the ranks that has the law enforcement knowledge and experience. With support, Robert William Smith. I've also received an email from Michael Barry from Bogut Road. Dear Brother Zemedy, I take this opportunity to tell you I support the endeavor of River Edge Local PDA 201 to fill the currently vacant police captain's position. Quite frankly, it never should have been allowed to be empty. The span of control and common sense suggests that another lieutenant cannot possibly maintain the appropriate level of supervision and control over the patrol and the detective division if the heads of those divisions are the same rank as the supervisory lieutenant. Innovative change, effective supervision, and efficiency all demand that a captain have operational control over all divisions. Consequently, there is a level of dysfunction inculcated in having lieutenants supervise lieutenants, and no respected police management publication has ever suggested that this is an effective line of supervision. In fact, most of the major publications on supervision, span of control, and chain of supervision by Iannone and others suggest the mirror opposite. The River Edge Police Department has a reputation among law enforcement agencies as being a superb municipal police department. While I'll be working the 2 to 10 tour on Friday, February 21st, and will not be able to attend the mayor and council meeting, I would like to give you my permission to read this email into the record in support of River Edge PBA Local 201's endeavor to fill the captain's position, which will make the River Edge PD more effective and efficient, which is the goal of the council and the residents of this fine community. Respectfully yours, Michael Barrett. So, that's all I was just saying.
Okay, thank you. Peg?
I'm not gonna come up there, I think you can hear me from here. Peggy White, 741 Century, and I totally agree with all of the letters that were just read to you. And I just don't feel that River Edge, the whole municipality, really don't know that this is happening. If anybody I've said anything to, they said, oh, I didn't know that we didn't have a captain. And, you know, if nobody knows about it, it hasn't been written up, big press made about it or anything out in the open. But I think that you're making a mistake by just saying we don't need a captain. I feel that the way it works and the way they're talking about how the work is too much on the lieutenants, there is no reason that I can see that you don't, that you want to leave it with that. So I support the police department totally.
Any other, Chief?
Good evening. I'd like to address 3 points that have been brought up by the PBA since this issue first came to the attention of the mayor and council September, October of 2016. Just a little background, I did meet with PBA after first broaching the proposal with the mayor and council. I had several conversations with Officer Zemenies as well as Officer Diamond. We then met at a PBA meeting for an excess of an hour, and then met several times after that, outlining what my proposal was. I even provided them with a copy of the documents that I presented to the mayor and council about the proposal for an administrative sergeant's position added to the table of organization. I'd like to address in 3 points counter to some of the information, frankly misinformation that has been presented. One element states that the safe operation of the police department and therefore public safety is affected by not having an unambiguous second in command. The notion that without a captain, no one knows who to answer to is simply not true. At one time, the River Edge Police Department had 3 captains. At another time, there was 1 captain and 1 lieutenant. One of them, one captain, was in charge of the Detective Bureau, and a lieutenant was in charge of patrol. Those positions later alternated. The rank itself had no bearing on which division they were in charge of. And in no circumstance did the lieutenant answer to the captain in a line of authority. Both individuals answered to the chief. Like now, one lieutenant is in charge of patrol, and another is in charge of investigations. In my absence,
chain of command dictates that the next ranking officer is in charge. If they are not of the same rank, if they are of the same rank, the senior most officer of the two is in charge. This doesn't just exist in the River Edge Police Department. It exists in the military of our nation and all over the world. Police departments are patterned after the military structure. We are a quasi-military organization in both our rank and our structure. All military personnel know this. All police personnel in this department know this. The dispatchers in the department and the civilian employees in the department know this too. To suggest there's any confusion simply cannot be supported. There are circumstances also where, in a case of an emergency, a tour commander who may be working after the hours when the chief has gone home and both lieutenants are no longer working, and that tour commander may be a sergeant, or maybe a senior patrolman who's there in the absence of a sergeant. That individual may encounter a situation, and even though I have a senior lieutenant and a second lieutenant that's junior to him in seniority but of the same rank, chain of command does not dictate that the tour commander has to go first through his lieutenant, and then that lieutenant has to talk to the other lieutenant to make a call, and then that lieutenant has to call me. And I'll give you two examples. Let's say at 3 o'clock in the morning there's a water main break that's going to require extra personnel to come in. Well, the tour commander is most assuredly going to wind up contacting the patrol division lieutenant because he's going to need extra personnel and resources and to advise him of the situation. And because that's something of significance, is going to require that amount of resources and notifications to the public, etc., I expect to get a phone call on that as well. In this instance, a lieutenant who is senior to him in rank is not in that loop at all, because that doesn't violate anything to do with the chain of command. Chain of command has to do with your specific rank and assignment and your task that you're performing within that chain. Another example, if there was an armed robbery at that same time in the morning, the lieutenant in charge of investigations would be getting the call. He, in turn, would more than likely notify a sergeant who's in investigations and have him come in or identify other investigators to come in. So you'll see right there, the notifications can go from a tour commander, who may be a patrolman, directly to an investigative lieutenant, from him to his detective sergeant, and then other detectives, and maybe that sergeant, or even that lieutenant coming in, depending on what the nature of that call is. If there's a situation where I am unavailable, or I'm not at work on a given day, there are many things that govern the functioning of the police department, and I don't want to leave anybody with the idea that in the absence of me being there, or even in the absence of a lieutenant being there, that everybody's looking for someone to provide them with immediate direction. There are absolutely circumstances that are going to necessitate additional supervisory personnel to be notified and involved. But understand also, in the absence of me being there tonight, if I'm sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, and so are both lieutenants, the department is not directionless. We are still governed by the federal Constitution, the Attorney General's directives, the laws of the state of New Jersey, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office directives, and the department's SOPs. All of those stay in place. And they stay in place whether I'm in another country or another state. And in my absence, that person that takes command of the department, whether it's for a day or a month, doesn't, and as long as I'm coming back, doesn't have the ability to change those regulations and SOPs and change the direction of the department. So those stay in place. It's someone to be essentially in charge of the station house while another senior officer is away. I'm not diminishing the command, but put it in perspective. If you have one captain and believe that that person is going to provide this umbrella of supervision that has been offered to you, it's simply not true. Unless you're going to have a captain working 5 days a week at least,
and on 3 shifts, then you're gonna need to hire 4 captains to do that. So there's always gonna be a point in time. This past weekend, from Friday afternoon on, there wasn't a lieutenant or a chief working. There were at times a sergeant as a senior officer in charge of the station house, and there are times when I was a patrol officer acting in capacity of patrol commander. One lieutenant happens to be on vacation this week, and another one, because of scheduling, didn't come in until between 2 and 3 o'clock this afternoon. I came into work 12 to 8 today. My schedule does vary. I don't work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 behind my desk. Some days I'm in 12 to 8. Some days you've seen me here at budget meetings on Saturday. Other times I'm 10 to 6. Sometimes I'm 8 to 4. It's going to vary. But one thing is for sure, there's always someone that the officers can call and know who that is. And even in my absence out of state 2 years ago, I was in Arizona on vacation, and my cell phone operating system failed me. First thing I did after that was call police headquarters from Arizona, 3 hours and 3,000 miles away, to give them my wife's cell phone number and contact me in case of an emergency. And the next day I got a phone call about a dead body that was recovered in River Edge that had been the victim of an accident. And while I'm not directing operations from there, I certainly weighed in on press releases and ensuring that certain steps were taken care of. So I was notified per an existing protocol as far as notifications in my absence. So I do wanted to touch on that as far as who's in charge of the department as opposed to command of the station house. I'm still in charge of the department even if I'm not here, if I'm otherwise incapacitated or unavailable. Someone's stepping in more in charge of the station house or to go to. And that still exists whether we're working on the same schedule or we're not. So other than the captain having to serve as just the designated officer in charge if the chief is away, what is this captain supposed to do in the situations when I am here? Is he in turn going to be a de facto deputy chief? The question of chain of command has come up repeatedly, and very little has been touched on in the instance of span of control. A span of control is a number of personnel that can reasonably, directly be supervised by an individual. In this command structure that's being offered to you by the PBA, they're suggesting that the chief will speak to the captain, who in turn will supervise 2 lieutenants. And not only have they offered that the position has to be filled, they're now offering that it should be a daytime position and they're setting the hours for the position. That's the closest I've seen in any of these examples to actually violating the chain of command. The designation of those assignments and what those officers fulfill in their assignments is entirely within the purview of the chief of police. It doesn't happen just in River Edge, and it's not only supported by our ordinances, it's the state law under Title 40, 40A, 14, 118. And in that, it says in pertinent part that the police chief has the right of assignment for all of his personnel and can prescribe the duties as well of all members in his organization. If there were a case where I actually had the structure that has been proposed, where there's a captain underneath me in the chain of command, and that I only dealt with that one captain, who in turn supervised 2 lieutenants, my span of control then is 1 officer. And that captain's span of control is 2. The higher you go in the organization, the span of control does diminish because the complexity of the work of the subordinate directly under you has become more complex. So at the first line of supervision, a first line sergeant in a patrol setting could supervise 3 officers and maybe as many as 8 or 9. And there are many times that we have called in extra officers for special events, 4th of July, other concerts, things like that, where a sergeant may be responsible for overseeing 8 or 9 patrolmen that are under him for a specific detail. And he can supervise that because their task and their function, while maybe not easy, is simple compared to complexity of higher levels of supervision.
But to narrow my span of control down to one subordinate, and then essentially bottleneck communications between me and the other subordinates, would be making a tremendous managerial step backward. I meet with my lieutenants every day. Whether it's formally or informally, at least 15 minutes, I'm stopping by their office or they into mine. Sometimes these conversations will last an hour and a half. And I'm brought up to speed on all of the day's events and everything that they're working on, continued tasks that I may have them performing, ongoing projects, supervision issues, cases that are being handled. It runs the entire gamut. I'm never going to allow a situation where I'm divorced from that first line supervision of those command staff officers, and that's how I refer to them as the command staff of the department. Add another level of supervision into that mix and further separate me from those individuals would be a tremendous mistake. So if I'm left with this command staff officer additional one as a captain, and I won't have that captain overseeing two lieutenants because I don't want to be separated from those two lieutenants, what exactly is he going to be left doing? And if what he's left doing is taking care of the functions and tasks that I would otherwise, under my model, be prescribed to a sergeant, I don't understand the benefit. Lastly, on that point, you've had the comparison of the captain to the lieutenant governor of the state of New Jersey, and now Alan has been designated as equivalent of captain as well. What you haven't heard is a lot of examples involving other police organizations. And the reason for that is simple. The bulk of the departments don't have a designated second in command who acts as a deputy chief, especially if they're our size. When you see departments of between 50 and 100 officers and up, you're not only dealing with the deputy chief at that point, directly under the chief, but you're dealing with multiple layers of captains, and you're dealing with an expanded amount of lieutenants, because the overall manpower in the department is that much greater than what we have. That is not the circumstance that we're facing. We don't have 3 captains who in turn are supervising 8 or 9 lieutenants, who in turn are supervising a dozen sergeants, who in turn are supervising several score of patrol officers. Each of the lieutenants has a manageable span of control right now. Patrol lieutenants supervising 4 sergeants. Each of those 4 sergeants are in turn supervising 3 officers. Additionally, the patrol lieutenant is supervising directly 2 traffic officers, who at times when they're reassigned to patrol will work for a sergeant that's on a patrol tour, but at other times when they're working a direct traffic assignment, their tasks and projects that are given to them, selective enforcement, etc., sign projects, parking issues, are under the purview of the lieutenant. They're not violating any chain of command by answering directly to that lieutenant. That is their direct line of assignment. It causes no confusion and everyone understands it. And there's the second point, is that the police department needs a captain and not something akin to another clerk. Well, I've previously discussed with the council, going as far back as when I first took over as chief, the demands of different duties and functions of the police department. But as I said, the higher you are in the organization, the more complex your task is, and the more room there is to modify what those positions actually entail. A patrol sergeant on a patrol tour, the job is pretty well defined. Again, it's not easy, and it's not always simple, but it's well defined. I have changed around the departmental table of organization. That is the operational function of the department that falls under those 2 divisions. I have at times managed things across more functional lines, consolidating both patrol and investigation functions under an operations commander, and a couple community policing and a lot of the other administrative tasks and functions under another unit as a division. And I
can change those because it's within my purview to do that. And that's based on the personnel I have and what I see as the best means of managing the department. I changed it back along more direct line authority within the command presently, and I'm happy the way those things are working. The determination to afford somebody a rank is predicated solely on their job's responsibility. First question is, do they need to supervise someone? An administrative sergeant could reasonably supervise a patrol officer, i.e., if you had a patrol officer who was handling tow inspection or some other field assignment, perhaps ABC inspections or gaming licensing, those types of things are administrative in nature that an officer is performing, but it wouldn't have to be a sergeant doing that. So a patrol officer could easily report to the administrative sergeant. Therefore, I could see that the administrative sergeant could reasonably have that rank. So it should be at least a sergeant. But it doesn't need to be a lieutenant to be in that position, let alone a captain. The other question is, do they need to hold a higher rank because of their job responsibility? It's so much greater than someone of a lower rank that it justifies that position. You could argue that someone in a detective, juvenile position that is dealing with very sensitive tasks and information requires a sergeant in that position, and it's generally the case. But some of these other responsibilities that I've previously outlined that run the gamut within the police department and are essential to the functioning of the department don't need to be done by a lieutenant. They have been done in the past within our department by sergeants. They have been done by patrol officers. What I'm lacking more than a command staff officer is I'm lacking the ability to draw an officer from the department, to separate him from his or her primary law enforcement responsibilities, and allow them, during what amounts to generally a daytime position, and allow them to focus on these tasks. So I agree with the PBA that most of these tasks take place during the daytime hours. It's the same argument I made to them. And it's the same reason why these tasks presently are divided up amongst the two lieutenants, because they're primarily working days. If I had a sergeant that was working those same hours, I could provide these tasks to that officer. And then it gets to the third point. What does that actually do by taking these tasks off the lieutenant's desks where they don't need to be? The first and foremost thing that it does is it provides greater supervision for the department. Those lieutenants, instead of having to divide their time amongst what is their primary responsibility, supervising their subordinates and managing their divisions, are dealing with administrative functions that are not based on policy-making decisions. For a lieutenant today to be contacting the computer company or the vendors or different outside contractors that are working on our tasks, he's not doing quote-unquote lieutenant's work at that point in time. What he's doing is administrative tasks that are not policy level, that are not command staff level tasks, but they're taking away from the time that that lieutenant could otherwise be creating additional and innovative assignments for his subordinates, could be spending more time directly on supervision of those subordinates and concentrating on the tasks that are his primary responsibility. Not only has the captain's position within the River Edge Police Department not been filled in 21 years, the same time during which some of the residents will have commented how wonderfully the police department has responded to their needs, and I agree, by the way. When the captain retired at that time, it was based on a decision made going back to 1988. At that time, it was decided that the position would not be filled and it would be done away with by attrition when the captain retired. It followed in 1996. And it's true the job was done by a civilian for 13 years. But the PBA can't have their argument in both ways.
They can't say the position has been vacant for 21 years and then argue that it was actually filled by a civilian for 13. It hasn't been filled by a captain for 21 years. The civilian filling that position for the 13 years did take some of those tasks away from a lieutenant's desk. But by the time I was a lieutenant, starting in 2001, I can tell you that the tasks and functions of that civilian administrative coordinator had been so diminished based on the fact that they couldn't spend any time doing any type of supervision of other patrol officers as a civilian, and limited by other logistical factors, that almost all of those functions have been divided up amongst 2 lieutenants already. That still didn't make them lieutenants' tasks. The tasks that we're talking about, those that are administrative in nature but not policy making in and of themselves, I've asked that a sergeant be able to take on those tasks so they're centralized under one officer. The lieutenants can focus on the primary job and the sergeants that are subordinate under them. As I said before, this is a need for an officer I could separate from the standard law enforcement functions and who can work generally during the daytime hours. If there is a captain added to the department, it would be synonymous with the deputy chief. And as I said, departments with a far greater table of organization may be able to support that, but there's no justification for that in our department. I understand, in closing, that my position isn't shared by the PBA. However, and as I've said this before to officers in the department, and as they've risen through the ranks, they've come to understand this more. Where you sit greatly affects where you stand. In short, I sit in the chief's office, and so my positions don't always stand with those of the PBA. We have, however, maintained a dialogue throughout this process, and all the members have been professional to me and respectful, including when I spent several hours addressing them at a PBA meeting. And I do greatly respect and admire the men and women of the River Edge Police Department. I believe they form one of the best police departments there are. And I've said that to the mayor and council on many occasions, as you know. But I'm still left obligated to manage the police department based on what I believe is the best interests of that department and its service to the community, not necessarily in the best interests of ensuring that additional ranks are filled. While these positions are no means mutually exclusive, they also don't always agree. I go out of my way, and always will, to make myself available to address any issues that the PBA has and brings to my attention, and I have always sought a fair and just solution. However, we can't always come to an understanding. But within the collective bargaining agreement, they have the ability to redress any unresolved grievances. This isn't an issue that pertains to a grievance. The PBA has openly acknowledged to me before that they know they don't have a vote in this matter. They want it to be heard. They have been. And they've been afforded the possibility of a third lieutenant's position staying on the table of organization in the form of this amended ordinance. In lieu of the captain's position, should it ever be deemed necessary for that lieutenant's position to be filled. What they don't have is the ability to prescribe the duties and assignments of the other officers in this police department. That purview is solely mine. And that's the same for every chief of police in the state of New Jersey under Title 40. I assign what the officers' job functions are, and I assign individuals to those positions. There are, of course, obvious positions that can't be just changed, and I'm not talking about arbitrary changes here. If I put a patrol officer in charge of a squad as a patrol officer in the absence of a sergeant, he is clearly and unambiguously doing sergeant's work. And the contract provides for the fact that after 75 days, he's elevated to an acting sergeant status and begins to receive sergeant's pay.
but within many of the other job functions within the department, and how I utilize personnel within the ranks described in the table of organization. That's for the chief of police to decide. As a patrolman, I'm sure I would have favored an opportunity to advance the argument for 3 promotions in the department. In their model, a patrol officer, a lieutenant would be promoted to a captain, a sergeant would be promoted to a lieutenant, and a patrol officer would be promoted to a sergeant. And at the end of the day, from my position, I would have a position of a captain that I no more need than an additional sergeant. And while I'm sure as a patrolman I may have favored that opportunity, from where I sit now as the chief executive officer, I'm charged with the responsibility to manage the day-to-day and overall operations of the department. The operational table of organization I have proposed allows me to meet all of these obligations, to increase efficiency, to provide greater and increased supervision, and to do it with 1 promotion. And it also affords me an additional first-line supervisor's position in this department that is a position where I can rotate personnel as I have successfully in other positions in the department, such as traffic and investigations. And I truly believe in the long run that having the exposure to some of these administrative tasks and to see that operational side of the department that they wouldn't normally function in as a patrol officer or as a sergeant under the present structure will be beneficial. And I welcome any questions you may have if there's anything that still may need to be cleared out.
If anyone from council wish to ask the chief a question. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Tom, we're still in open session. Would it be more appropriate for the council to make comments after we close to the public or while we're still open to the public?
You have to close to the public. You have to
That's
hear
what I
all
thought.
comments.
All right. So the public alone, if there is anyone from the public who'd like to make a comment? All right. Sergeant?
Mayor Council, Sergeant Kurt Wilhelm. I know one thing has not been addressed. It was brought up briefly. I took a promotional test. Not only for sergeant, I took that twice. I took the lieutenant's test.
Sergeant William, are you talking about the possible promotion of an administrative sergeant, or are you talking about the question of whether we should extend the sergeant's list? If you are, they are not germane to this conversation, and I must ask you to stand down. If you would like to talk about the table of organization, you are welcome to stay.
I think one is interconnected with the other. If you're readjusting table organization and you're going to make a promotion.
Sergeant, I would disagree with that. There is no obligation on the council to make a promotion. The council has to decide whether they wish to do that, and then, of course, that would go through, that would be at another meeting. Just as there is no obligation if the captain's position stays, if this ordinance fails and the captain's position stayed, or if this ordinance passes and we go to a lieutenant. But I'm going to defer to our...
You're only open for discussion on this one.
Yes. You are more than welcome to come back and talk about that other issue, but that is not what we're discussing right now, and I'm sorry, I don't wish to be disrespectful.
No problem.
Thank you. Anyone else to talk about this issue? Yes, please come forward. Please state your name and address again.
John Highland, 545 Fifth Avenue in River Edge. There's just one thing that the chief mentioned about the similarities between the police department being paramilitary and strong ties to the military chain of command. I just don't see the military eliminating a major's role. They just don't eliminate a rank.
Mm-hmm.
There are things for them to do that generals can interface with majors who speak to their captains and so on down the line, even with a colonel in there. You know, they even have degrees of colonel, full colonel, light colonel. So eliminating a position, I don't think is correct.
All right.
Right?
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to the ordinance that we are currently considering, 17-4? Seeing none, I call for a motion to close the public hearing on the ordinance. So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Are there any comments from council before we vote? I'd like to make a few comments. When this ordinance first came up, it appeared from the information that was provided that both the PBA and the chief would think that 3 lieutenants was an appropriate structure. But having learned so much more, I myself have sat with the chief. The chief has given of his time to me. I have spoken to the PBA. I have listened to the chief's arguments. I have listened to the PBA's argument. At this time, I do not think I can vote for this ordinance because I think removing the captain's position is a mistake. Having said that, I'd like to make clear I do not believe that we should fill the captain's position. I believe that some of the arguments that were made that we are not a backwater hamlet and there are issues that, serious issues that our officers deal with, our chief deals with, our lieutenants deal with, our sergeants deal with, has become very apparent to me for being a liaison with the police department for 2 years, which I think I've had an excellent relationship with both the chief and the PBA. I do not believe at this time that we need a captain's position, but I think it would be a mistake to remove the captain's position. There may come a time, 1, 2, 10 years from now, where a captain's position may well be needed. So I look at this as what level of need is there, and should we be removing a position that we may indeed need to reinstate later? I see no harm in leaving the captain's position. I see only benefits. I'm not quite sure that we need to leave 3 lieutenants in the ordinance. I'm not completely convinced that we need an administrative sergeant. And because of that, I do not believe this ordinance at this time responds well to the needs of the citizens and residents of River Edge. So I believe that this ordinance, as it is currently written, is flawed. I will be voting no, and I am hoping that others on the council may also vote no, and that we might have further discussion and return the captain's position, consider whether we need the 3rd lieutenant, which was really a compromise that it seems nobody really wants. Do we want the 6th sergeant? I think the council does. I'm still a little bit unsure about that. And of course, patrol officers of 17. Again, we are under absolutely no obligation to fill this. This allows flexibility in hiring. This sets up a table of organization. There is no promise or obligation to hire to these levels. We, as a council, should consider the needs of the town as they present themselves from year to year. I invite anyone else in the council to offer comments. If there is none, then we'll call for a vote. Councilman Bartoloni.
Thank you. It's not often that you get presented with an ordinance that has this much, I guess, importance sometimes, and how it affects people. And I've had the opportunity to listen to the chief many times. I've spoken to the PBA president many times about this as well. And both sides make a compelling case. Just to give some history, I guess, about the ordinance and why it included the 3rd lieutenant. My understanding was the last time a study was done of the department, and this is going back some ways, that study also concluded that the captain's position should be eliminated and a third lieutenant should be added to the structure. And so that's why this current table of organization was structured in such a way. The thought was that trying to keep, obviously a dated study perhaps, but that's what the prior study had called for. And so as a measure of compromise, the thought was if this administrative sergeant position turns out to be more administrative than proposed, that you could eliminate that position and move someone up to a lieutenant's position where perhaps they more where they were supposed to be. The elimination of the captain's position, though, does sort of coincide with my sense of fiscal responsibility. Positions that are there, if they're going to be in the table of organization, then should be filled. I don't see the need to keep a position there that's not going to be filled. If the position's there, then I suppose it should be filled. But in doing so, then, and this was a reservation I had with the administrative sergeant's position as well, was that are you taking an officer off the road, putting him or her behind a desk? Is that also what we should be doing? Does that best serve the public? And then if you do have the administrative position, and then you also have a captain, what are you doing to the municipal budget? Because then you're getting into a proposition that's exceedingly expensive. And we're going to introduce the budget later, and I invite everyone to take a look at it. But when you're trying to manage expenses, adding personnel is not the way to manage expenses. So personally, and again, I think both sides make a compelling argument, and I'm not a police officer. I have a history of studying criminology in college. I've represented police officers and PDAs in disciplinary matters and in the Superior Court. I certainly grew up in the environment. My father was a narcotics detective in the Sheriff's Department in Essex County. So I understand the culture, but at the same time, what it comes down to, and this is a unique situation also in that usually we only have our supervisors coming and asking us for positions. This is unique in that we have a union coming up and asking us for positions to be filled. But what I have to do as not an expert is I have to take the person that we've entrusted to be an expert. And I have to rely upon his 30-plus years of experience in the job as the head of that department and rely on his recommendation. And that's where I stand. Again, both sides make a compelling argument, but I have to go with the person who is in charge of the department and has 30-plus years of expertise.
Would either councilwoman or man like to speak?
Just briefly, a lot has been said. I've given this a lot of thought. I wanted to thank the chief and Joe for their time this week. I sat down with each of them. They presented their cases, gave me literature to read. I've read through everything and I've reached a decision, which you'll hear in a moment. But certainly my decision is being rendered, having given a lot of thought and with specificity to the language of the ordinance and to the goals that it seeks to accomplish. And my question from the beginning has been whether it is reason to so accomplish those goals. That's all I have to say for now. Thanks.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. Similarly, I would like to thank both Joe Zemedies from the PBA for organizing your members and being so passionate and so eloquent about your needs. And similarly with Chief Critty for doing the same. I have thought long and hard. I've listened to many members. We've had many discussions about this as a council, both in open and closed. And I have to say that I don't have a law enforcement background at all, except for the wonderful things that I've seen from our own community. And you all have my full support. I think you know that, and I hope you, regardless of my vote, you will understand that that does not change. But I have to listen to Chief Caridi and what he expresses his needs as the Chief Executive Officer of this department are. And when I vote, I hope you will understand my decision-making. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you would poll the council.
Need a motion.
We need a motion. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 17-4?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Councilman Aggravated is absent. Councilman Barnwell.
Yes.
Councilman Bastido.
Yes.
Councilman Amico.
No.
And Councilman Papaleo.
No. The ordinance does not pass, therefore it fails. I would like at this point to make a motion to, since if we continue with the table organization, we cannot include the mayor or Councilwoman Davis. I think that what I'd like to do is make a motion that we restore the captain's position, and I would, if the council is so inclined,
It's table of organization stays as is.
yes, but if we wanted a new ordinance, if we wanted to.
If you want to change it around.
Yes.
But the captain's position is
Yes.
in there right now.
Yes.
My suggestion would be is you revisit this at a work session meeting for a full discussion.
Okay, that's a good idea then. All right, so at this point, we would invite the mayor and councilwoman.
They can come back and join.
Okay.
Sure.
Did we do
Can you get
17-5? No.
You're the clerk. Yeah, just grab them, Tom.
No, you didn't.
Is it police related?
No.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
Is it? Oh, yeah, but that's, they don't have any conflict with that.
Only personnel matters.
Yeah. I mean, because they gotta leave again for, it's 17-88, so. Don't you guys want to stick around for 17-88?
I think you got to get every case. You have a good case.
Recess or?
No. Turning your back to the motion to not pass. So we're on to 17-5.
We have a public hearing on ordinance 17-5. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance 17-5 by title, please.
Bond ordinance to amend section 4 of bond ordinance number 1787 entitled Bond Ordinance to Authorize the Making of a Public Improvement in the Acquisition of New addition or replacement equipment and machinery, new information technology equipment, new communication and signal systems equipment, and new automotive vehicles, including original apparatus and equipment in, by, and for the Borough of River Edge, the County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $350,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds, to finance such appropriations, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
Okay, this is bond order to allow for the purchase and installation of software, hardware, and equipment to implement e-ticketing for the police department and probably other items as well.
No, that's it.
Oh, that's it?
It changes the scope.
Oh,
to
change the
allow for
scope,
this
yeah,
purpose.
okay.
That's all we're doing.
So can I have a motion to open the public hearing on this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Open to the public on ordinance 1787. Would any member of the public like to make any comment or ask a question regarding this ordinance? It's a typical capital bond ordinance. So you know, have a motion to close, please.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion for the adoption of ordinance 17-5?
So moved.
Second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Brady is absent. Councilman Maloney.
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve. Yes. Councilman Caluso.
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes.
And Councilman Cavalera.
Yes.
So that's adopted, that will be published. We have resolutions by consent, resolution 17-74 to 17-100 and 17-102. Would any member of council like to pull out for separate consideration or vote any of these resolutions? Ms. Thompson?
Yes, Mayor, I think we need to pull out 17-88. That's the resolution to amend the eligibility list for promotion to the police department for the rank of sergeant, unless, I don't know if you're staying or not for that.
No, sorry. You pull it out for separate vote, that's
All
fine.
right. And then also 17-80, I just think the introduction of the budget shouldn't be done by consent.
So can I please have a motion by consent for resolution 17-74 through 17-79, 17-81 to 17-87, 17-89 to 17-100, and 17-102.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 1788, resolution to amend the eligibility list for promotion to police. Is there a motion for, or you want to make a motion to table it, or?
I would make a motion, based upon the last vote, I would make a motion to table it at this time.
For a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Brady is absent. Councilman Maloney.
Just so you
It's
know.
mine.
No, just
Well,
so
if
you
we
know.
do that, then we have to interview if we're going to change table of organization. Okay.
I'll leave it up to you, because we'll have it want.
I'm gonna vote no. I'm
We have
gonna
a
vote
second.
for. We are voting on tabling it?
Yes.
There's a motion to table.
There's a motion to second on the table.
Councilman Maloney.
Yes.
Councilwoman Steve.
No.
Councilman Caluso.
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes.
No,
You recuse yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. You good?
Don't pull me, don't pull me.
And Councilman Cavalera.
No.
So the motion to table does not pass. So you need a motion to approve or deny the resolution.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for 3 months extension of the promotion list.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Maloney.
No.
Councilwoman Steve. Yes. Councilman Caluso.
Yes.
And Councilman Cavalera.
Yes.
Resolution 17-80, introduction of the 2017 budget. Do you want to make the motion, Councilman?
Yeah, I just make the motion and introduce it. I just think it deserves a little more fanfare than it gets, especially when you read online and some people in the public think we don't put any time and effort into it because all they see is the adoption of a resolution without seeing the countless hours that go on at meetings on Saturdays and taking this book home and studying it like it's, it's gospel. So I just think it deserves a separate vote.
You can move it.
Yeah, I make the motion to introduce it, sorry.
Second.
Any more discussion? I said, I'll just add again that I think the overall budget was up 0.75%. The tax levy, I believe, went up 1.6%. If you look at the inflation rate from last year, it started tailing up at the end of the year, so I think the average for the total inflation for 2016 was 2%. So as far as I'm concerned, we're on the right track again. We're below the caps substantially. We kept the tax increase below inflation. And I think we're still heading in the right direction. I said for the council to introduce a budget which is only 0.7% more than last year, I think is a Herculean effort. if we didn't have some decreases in the revenue side, and if we still weren't adhering to a very, very conservative and strict use of surplus, we certainly could be looking at a tax decrease this year. But prudence tells us that we still need to stay consistent with the way we're handling our surplus and the way we're managing our debt. So hopefully we will be able to reap the benefits of that going forward, just not this year completely. Like I said, I think we did a very good job in controlling the costs and trying to minimize the impact of the taxpayer. And I said we've been prudent by building up our surplus, which this year is probably the highest it's been in a decade. So I think these are things we ought to be proud of. And Councilman, to your point, yes, it should get a little more fanfare than part of the consent agenda. It makes it very anticlimactic. So with that, roll call, please.
Councilman Ballhorn?
Yes.
Councilman Christie? Yes. Councilman Kunigo?
Yes.
Councilman Davis?
Yes.
And Councilman Papalato?
Yes.
And lastly, Resolution 17-101, payment of bills. Councilman Bartoloni, please move.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Whereas vouchers for the payment of goods and services rendered to the Borough of River Edge have been received, and whereas each bill has been checked by the receiving department, approved by the Chief Financial Officer and Borough Clerk, and reviewed by the 3 members of the Finance Committee, now therefore be it resolved that bills as listed now be confirmed for payment from the appropriate funds as follows. Current account, $3,345,742.46. Capital account, $27,846.16. Recreation account, $2,933. Animal welfare account, $187.20. Trust other developers account, $2,960. Trust other account, $1,014.69. Open space account, $540. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
Okay. Can I have a motion open to the public, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now open for general public comment. Anything on anybody's mind? Peggy?
Been a long night.
Lou, Ken? Seeing no, motion to close, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council comments. Councilman Kinigo. I'll get it.
It's been a long meeting, and I think we've accomplished a lot with respect to the high-profile ordinance. I'm sure that there's some disappointment, but I know that we can all work together to find language that can make everybody happy, and that is the reason I voted the way I did on that particular ordinance. And beyond that, thank you all for your hard work, and especially with the budget. I've only been involved for about a month now, but I know you all have to put in a lot of work, and that should be recognized. So thank you, everybody.
Councilwoman Davis.
First, I'd like to congratulate Sergeant Abadi for his 2 CPR saves in 2 weeks. Secondly, Farmers Market Committee had their first meeting on January 24th. We will be having the Farmers Market again on Tuesdays from June till mid-October, beginning June 6th. We're reaching out to new vendors, utilizing social media and print advertising. And yesterday, very well-written letter was emailed to all of the vendors. Fire Department, I met on the 18th with the officers regarding their budget requests, and on the 26th, I went to a departmental meeting and introduced myself, gave them my contact information in case of any issues. And Neil Carroll was in charge, checked out the Safer's grant letter from Josh Gottheimer, and it's for hiring for paid departments. They give grants, so it didn't really work for us. Board of Health, I went to the meeting on January 30th, and they mentioned that the flu is really high activity right now and continuing to be that way. We're in great shape with our health department. Arlene Faustini does a great job, and Joanna, she's really a tiny little girl that does a super job. I can't imagine her going in and inspecting these places, closing them down, whatever. But she does a good job. I was very impressed. And kudos to the DPW. Neighbor of mine came over to tell me what a great job they did in fixing the grass from the snow plowing damage they did. And I said, that's nice to hear. Did you call them? And she said, no, they just came and did it. So kudos to them. And that's it for me.
Councilman Papaleo.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to also, I think Councilman Bartoloni was right to call out or to have a separate vote on the resolution. The Citizens Budget Committee worked extremely hard, gave up Saturdays, gave up evenings. Al, as the head of the Finance Committee, I think you and your committee did a phenomenal job. Alan, your patience with us is always heroic. And we, I think, have done a great job every year for the last 5 years. I can only say for the last 5 years because I've only been on the council for 5. This is my 5th. It really is a phenomenal ability to bring it in what appears to be under inflation, to bring it in at 0.75. The levy was harder because of loss of revenue, as the mayor said. So, you know, we've done a good job for the town. I hope the town appreciates it. But I know I appreciate the Citizen Budget Committee and the council, which I'm a part of, and Al, and everyone else who's been a part of that, and everyone in the Finance Department, and our clerk, and everyone who's been a part of this. I just wanted to report that the Emerald Ash Borer issue, which we budgeted for in our capital, and we talked about briefly tonight, is a serious issue that I know Shade Tree is working on. But in addition, and I'm going to mention that, and I think Shade Tree really is using a lot of foresight. It's better to try to save our trees than to have to replace them. In addition to that, if these trees aren't treated and the bug attacks, one of the things that the Shade Tree has explained to me during our January meeting was that the tree collapses, literally collapses. It becomes brittle, and it becomes a hazard to pedestrians walking the sidewalk. It becomes a hazard to the DPW as they try to cut it down. So hopefully this proactive stance that our Shade Tree is doing will be a good one. Now, Councilwoman Bastide has spoken to Tracy
Chairwoman Freeholder and Tracy
Zora, forgot her last name. And I've also spoken to Jim Tonelli, Steve, I always say that, I don't want to do that. Steve Tonelli, who is in charge of our parks, and spoken to both of them about maybe getting the county together. I know Alan, and I want to thank him, I saw it in the minutes of the Riverside Cooperative, has spoken to Riverside Cooperative. Right now, we put in the full cost to treat our trees, but with luck, perhaps the county and or the Riverside Cooperative might be able to bring that cost down for the citizens of River Edge. So I want you to know that we've done the proper thing by budgeting for it, but with any luck, we might not need to use all of those funds, and that they could go to replacing trees on the street. Beautification met on January, and I was there, but they did not meet in February due to weather. The meeting had to be canceled. Shade Tree met in January, I was there, but and then met in February. I was not able to be there because of parent-teacher conferences. The DPW, I think, did a phenomenal job on snow removal again. Thank you, John, and all the DPW. I would ask the council quickly if they wish to, or maybe we'll put it in a work session. The snowflakes, do you think we left them up too long? Did we not blame them? I've heard from both. Some residents said it was up too long. Some residents liked it. And so maybe at a work session we can talk about that. That might be a better thing since it's already 10 after 10. And I'd like to congratulate Nancy, what is Nancy's last name? Cheng? Am I saying it right? to her appointment for the trade tree, and I'd like to thank Elizabeth Anivas for her service on the shade tree. And thank you for indulging me. And
Councilman Bartolone.
Thank you, Mayor. Geez, where to start? I feel like we've been through a campaign tonight. Just where I guess I want to start is with the budget, obviously. And one thing that I'm particularly proud of, back in, I think it was like January 1st, 2013, at the sine die, we adopted the fund balance policy. And at that time, there was a little over $1 million in the surplus fund. And when we adopted that policy, we thought, you know, this is going to take forever to get it where it should be, our target goal. But it was the right thing to do. And 4 years later, the surplus is over $3.8 million, and we reached our target. That being said, it's important that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. You know, going back in 2005, there was $9 million in surplus, and over years it kept getting reduced. And you know, I think some people have heard of, you know, people in the 20s had a Depression-era mentality that carried over. And I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think he thinks this way too. I think both of us, we came on right after that, and I think we still both have a Depression-era mentality when it comes to the budget. Because you can see how quickly, in the course of several years, what people think was good and flourishing can rapidly deteriorate to a position where you have furloughs and layoffs. And so that does guide my thoughts on staffing, on expenses, on how we spend the taxpayers' money. And, you know, this year, the number may change, but I think the increase is about $50 to the average home. And it's important to know that that encompasses 73% of the town are at or below that level of average home. So I think we've done a fantastic job based upon what we had before us. But that being said, again, when we're talking about positions and we're talking about promotions, and you know, we also have to look at what's our debt position going to be in a year or two. Had not the bill from the Bergen County Utility Authority come in lower than expected, you might have seen a different result. If you look at when we've gone out the last couple of years for garbage contracts to see if we could do something better, those numbers have come in seriously higher than what we're currently paying. And our garbage contract will expire in a couple of years. So all of these things you have to balance, current positions and staffing requests versus just how things can go so wrong so quick. And so when you talk about positions and you talk about hiring, you know, you also have to balance each department's requests. You know, you have to look at DPW makes requests, and Shade Tree, and the library, and the police department, and you have to balance all of them up here because, and I suppose rightfully so, but they all have their own myopic view about their department, and that's what they should do, focus in on their department. But we have to look at the bigger picture, and sometimes does that put us into conflict with what people want? Yeah, it does. But I think, and I hope everybody understands that we do that because we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to balance the interests of all parties and the residents of the town. And so that's what I think we strive to do. In terms of the open space allocation, I'm glad how it came out. You can see when it comes to talking about Regal and girls athletics, obviously I have two daughters who are in the programs. So does that shade how I think and what I'd like to see for the future of girls athletics in town? Yeah, it does. little-known fact about me that most people would never suspect, but in law school, I was an editor on the Women's Rights Law Reporter. Most people would never would ever think that, but, because, you know, people have this view of Republicans, and it's not true. But that's a fact, and it's an issue that I am passionate about. So, you know, that colors my perspective. You know, in terms of the table of organization, again, I appreciate the passion on both sides. I understand the positions of both parties. And again, I thought the prudent course of measure was to go with the person who has the most experience and the person that we charged with running the department. That being said, I also don't believe in half measures. If you're going to leave a position in, then fill it. If you're not willing to fill it, then why leave it? It doesn't make any sense. Why have a position in a table of organization that you have no interest in filling? That's the position I take. But I say, again, though, if your position is to fill that, well then I encourage whoever wants to see that position filled to come up with the money for the sergeant's testing, the lieutenant's testing, and the salary of that captain's position. And you should look then to see whether or not you have to fill an additional patrol officer's position, because that captain's not going to be on the streets. That captain's not going to be patrolling. He's not going to serve that function. So when you start adding up all those costs, you should be prepared to add an extra $100,000, $120,000 into this year's budget. And if you're not prepared to do that, then don't put that captain's position in. So, but I guess that's a discussion for a later date. That's it.
Councilman Stevens.
Thank you. River Edge Environmental Commission had a meeting last week. They had a quorum for the first time in I don't know how many years. So that's fantastic. And I'd like to thank Greg Ogden, who stepped down as commissioner, for his many, many years of service in that role as chairperson of the commission, and wish Laura Hookstrait, who was installed by the mayor, as the new chairperson, best of luck. She's an educator and an ecologist, and she's got great ideas, and I wish her much luck, and the rest of the commission as well. Bobby Conway updated us on the KBG Light project, moving forward very well. Just a few comments on the AEDs. And Alan, I'll ask you, I know we're not at a work session, but I understand that the Board of Education has prepared a shared services agreement for those AEDs, and has that reached your desk?
It's on my email list, but I haven't had time to read it.
But it has been sent to you, great. So pending budget approval, which I think we have, the Recreation Commission is, with Alan's help, is looking at leasing 4 AED units for placement at KBG, Cherry Hill, Roosevelt, and Memorial. The outside company will conduct a in-person training and handle maintenance and protocol. So that's progress that the council wanted to see, and I'm pleased that the commission has been able to achieve, will be able to achieve that this year. The Rec Commission also has a Facebook page. They're using our social media policy, so please like it to be up to speed on all of the events coming up. The River Edge Run is April 21st. You can find information out about it on their Facebook page. Everyone has said it tonight, but the budget process can be intensive and grueling and often competitive. But I would like to thank my colleagues for all their hard work, as well as Alan and Gita and the entire Finance Committee for steering us, helping to steer the ship, and I'm very proud of what we've introduced tonight, so thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
I'll just wrap up. I'm pleased to hear about the AEDs. It's something we've been talking about for quite a while, so it sounds like they're actually coming to fruition on that, and hopefully that'll be up for spring sports. I've said enough on the budget, but again, appreciate everybody's hard work on that, and I think Councilman Bartolone's point, I've said, and I don't need to be the henny penny, the sky is falling, but we see where we're going with our debt service, and we know where the salary pressures are bringing us. So every year gets to be more and more of a challenge, And like I said, my goal is never to have to go back to those days where we've had furloughs and layoffs, because I think that's the one thing we don't want to do. And like I said, be a little more, I wouldn't necessarily call it depression era mentality, but to be prudent, and like I said, to really prioritize what we're spending money on and making sure that we get value for every dollar. And like we saw tonight, you know, they said it's, you know, sausage making, politics, whatever. And it's true, and I hope that, you know, we had some spirited debate, but, you know, I told Dario at the break, you know, at the end of the day, we all come back together. I think that's been the personality of this council, and I hope that's where we go back to. I would hate to see that, you know, some of these relatively minor disagreements, you know, are going to undo any good work that we have or may do going forward this year. I had convened, or actually, Director, Office of Emergency Management Director, Coordinator Ron Strace and I had a meeting of our local emergency management council last week, and again, I was pleased with the attendance. We had almost the full 15-member council come. Remember, this is people from all walks of life, including school superintendents and department heads and the fire department. And Coordinator Strace had briefed us an update on our at-risk individual initiative. And when we had started, we had, I think, 4 or 5 individuals identified as quote-unquote at risk, and right now we have upwards of 40 that have been identified to the health department. So those are 40 residents who now have, the police will have access to emergency services when needed, and we're continuing to advertise this initiative. The houses of worship are doing it on their own at this point. We haven't quite worked out how they want to handle confidentiality issues and that, so right now they're handling people in their own groups, and we have 40 people who actually reported to the borough through Arlene Costini. And like I said, it's a great initiative, and we hope that it's going to continue. Councilman Steve mentioned about the Environmental Commission. I would also thank Greg Ogden. He was, I told him he was, I forgot the word I used, but basically, you know what, he stuck through with this commission through its worst times. He was there when it started, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, and then as interest waned, and we had a very hard time getting even a quorum, Greg always was there for the commission. He championed its mission and was always a great advocate for it. And I'm pleased he stayed on as a commissioner, because his insight and his talents are still needed. I'm very excited with Laura taking over. She's shown great enthusiasm. She already sent me a couple-page email on things she wants to do, all great ideas. So I think we breathed new life into that group, and I think it'll be a very positive force going forward. I know the hour is late. Oh, before I get to that, I did want to go back to with the management council. I had broached the idea, and I'm going to bring it up with Arlene. I wanted to try to expand the mission of this at-risk resident theory to times when it's not emergencies. And we had talked about times, whether it's a power outage or maybe not, where a senior citizen may need people to snow shovel or to rake leaves or get a prescription picked up or things like that. And one thing that actually had happened right prior to this last snowstorm was I got an email from Judy. I guess a resident had called the Borough Hall saying they needed someone to shovel for her, or she was looking for someone to shovel, so she didn't know who to direct them to. I put feelers out to the Boy Scout troop, and I will give credit where credit is due to Assistant Scoutmaster Michael Gensch at Troop 2295, who him and his 2 sons went to the lady's house and took care of her shoveling. And I know that Mr. Strace and Superintendent Fletcher were talking about how to utilize some of the high school students to come up with some kind of network going forward. So that's another positive outcrop from the local emergency management council I wanted to mention tonight. Lastly, I know it's late, but there's something I want the chief to address. And we've had this from time to time, where we have postings on social media regarding perceived, alleged, maybe elaborated incidents. And Chief, I don't know how much detail we want to get into, but there's certain things I just want to really get on the record as to spelling, because there's some certain incidents which I've seen discussed on social media, which I'm not sure that they're, not only that they have no basis in fact, they're completely untrue. And I think it's not out of necessarily anybody's particular fault, but I think it's one of these things where people hear a rumor and then it gets exaggerated as it gets from person to person. So, there was some concern about what they call a quote-unquote rash of burglaries in the last, I'm assuming the last month. Do you just want to comment that on general and whether we're experiencing a rash of burglaries?
In 2017, there was a home burglary, residential home burglary, occurred last week of January. Several days later, there was actually it was the 24th, I believe, of January, 28th. There was an attempted residential burglary with unsuccessful attempt. On February 5th, I believe, there was another residential burglary. So in the span of a little over 2 weeks, there were 2 burglaries and 1 attempt. In the preceding months of the ending of 2016, I believe there was 1 residential burglary in December. There were, I believe, 3 in November, 1 in October, 1 in September, and 3 in August of all commercial burglaries, 2 with a successful one. On average, over the course of a year, we may have as few as 10 to 12 burglaries, and what I consider a rash of burglaries is certainly something that reaches startling proportions. Would be in a time frame like in 2010 or so, when we had 42 burglaries in a single year. And a number of factors that contributed to that, but it was absolutely an anomaly of an organized gang that was operating and had just been released from a number of years in incarceration, and we're back at it again. But what we've had in certainly the end of last year and going into this year is I don't make light of any, just put it on the record, I'm not making light of any burglary and saying that it's insignificant. Any burglary feels like an assault to the person that it happens to. It's an extremely serious crime to devote significant amount of personal and resources to investigate whenever there's a burglary. So I've been no means taking it lightly, but I can't characterize burglaries for you. Reporting has been characterized.
One of the things I think that gets people scared has to do, and I think it's sometimes also just a lack of finesse with understanding nomenclature, because when they were describing these recent incidents, the people called them home invasions. And I think when I hear home invasions, I'm thinking of somebody busting through the front door and tying people up to chairs and putting gags in their mouth. Is that the case? Is that the case in any of the incidents we've had?
No, absolutely not.
Was there an incident where an elderly couple walked in on a robbery and a person was beaten with a gun?
No.
Okay. So I think what happens is I think sometimes things get exaggerated and people pick up on it and they get very fearful, and rightly so. I would think if I thought this was going on, I'd be very concerned myself.
There was an armed robbery that took place. It was reported, it was in the paper. It had to do with 2 individuals that arriving home, and they were accosted outside their home. However, that case investigation, by all indicators, was a targeted robbery. These individuals were selected in advance and followed to that location. It was not a random robbery. There was a minor injury in that when the husband and wife was wife, came to his aid and tripped on a portion of the steps, and so that no one was being looked on, there was no invasion into a home, there was certainly nothing random in terms of street crime.
Several years ago, there was an incident where there was maybe the thought there was an attempted kidnapping. It says, they're claiming now that, quote unquote, they played it off as if he was playing hooky. Do you recall the circumstances of that incident and whether that was actually kidnapping or was it something less?
I can tell you most assuredly we have not had a kidnapping, thankfully. In as much as these, trying to make sense of rumors on Facebook or whatever.
My point is not to ridicule, but I'm trying to get what some of the things that are being said and then that are being proffered as being true.
No, I understand.
And what I'm trying to, and it's not, I said it's not to put down anybody in particular, but this is the level we're getting to, and I'm very concerned that these things take a life of their own, and the people need to know that the police department is protecting us, and we're not being.
I'm not disparaging the person.
No.
They may actually believe that that's, they may be ready in good faith. What I'm getting to is I can't account for how something like that could have gotten started. I can only myself, and this is conjecture, try and come up with if there's any incident at all, if there's any resemblances. But now, I'm kind of like grasping and trying to come up with where the rumor came from. If you said 7 years ago was a time frame, there was an incident that was probably every bit of that long ago, where there was a child of approximately 12 years of age, I believe, who ran away from home. And we immediately marshaled resources from every available officer in the police department to the county agencies, and even brought the state in, as we do for a missing child. We didn't know what circumstances were other than the child who suddenly gone missing. And part of the investigation wound up determining his whereabouts on the investigative meetings that we were going to find out several hours later, and he had left entirely his own volition and was found at a park some 5 or so miles from River Edge, and was returned to his family. Now, is that the incident that is being represented here? I can't say for sure. It's the closest thing I can think of that may have been misinterpreted somehow. We certainly did not have kidnapping. And I don't think any incident trying to cover anything up.
And then there was one other one, and I think they're talking about the same time frame, where they said a boy came into middle school with a gun and wagged it around, and it was quote unquote swept under the rug. And I'm assuming from that time frame, I was probably the police liaison, so if that happened and I didn't know about it, I would not be very pleased to find that out. But is that something that was?
No, on that one, I can't even speculate or something like that.
And I hate to go there, but some of the comments, they're thanking Kathleen for her feedback. We can all guess who Kathleen is, but we'll leave it at that. It's somebody who was blocked on Facebook, so I can't see who's responded to these. But we've had this problem in the past, and I think it's incumbent upon anybody who engages in these Facebook pages is to try to get some sort of realistic information out. And I don't know what the best way to do it. I know you've tried to do public service announcements through the town news about. I know the police have offered home security checks. We're open to more ideas how we can get people more comfortable knowing that the police are doing their best to protect us, that things are not as dire as they're saying. And yes, we've had some serious incidents. No one's trying to dispute that. But I think this gets to get people very panicky, where people are afraid to leave and let their kids walk home from school. And that's obviously every parent has to make their own judgment on that. But I don't want them thinking that we're in a culture in this town where that's not safe to do. And like I said, if there's a way that you can think of with the department
in terms of, I'll just take a couple of things one at a time, very, very briefly. In terms of burglaries, for example, I mean, we have programs where we will do home security surveys when an officer comes to your home and check the residence and the landscaping and lighting and door locks and the alarm
alarm systems and all the measures you can do to target harden your residents and make it less attractive to burglars. We also put out, information as far as times of the year. This past winter, we were getting into the winter season when days are shorter. People are away in the evening, often coming home to a dark house. So we left it was daylight, we went home it was dark, and then we light on, the house appears to be unoccupied, and becomes a target for burglars. I put an article in the paper about it. They were kind enough to take my whole statement and print it. Trying to provide some crime prevention measures. When incidents happen, they're not covered up, they're not swept under the rug. Obviously, there are some incidents that take place that are sensitive in nature, and the specifics, whether it's having some health issue, or a child, or some type of sensitive investigation where the particulars can't be released. And again, that's standard everywhere. Ongoing investigations, there are some restrictions, but there's nothing that's hidden from the public. And if anyone has, I can't go on Facebook myself and start responding to these kind of things. It's,
Mayor, could I offer a suggestion? I don't know if this is a good suggestion or not, Chief. You can certainly use it or not use it. But maybe reaching out to the PTO, saying that we've heard of these issues, that they are untrue. The PTO is pretty good at passing information around.
well, I mean, one thing that I've also put out there, if somebody has these concerns, rather than start the game of telephone on Facebook, pick up the telephone and contact my office. Contact the police department. I'll be happy to address these issues if someone has a specific concern. We have a dialogue with the schools and with the PTO, and
It may be timely just to send out a notice again, reminding people how to, to best protect their houses, let them know again of what you offer, and maybe put that out there too, just rather than, deal with speculation or things you may hear in social media. Don't be uncomfortable reaching out to anybody up here or to your office directly, because I think,
we've always encouraged that. We always ensure that the residents every chance we get, if there's no communication with, with our department that we consider significant. If you see something, contact us. Don't be afraid. If you have a question, contact us.
no, because we don't want people being unnecessarily, and again, we know there have been serious incidents. We're not trying to dispel that, but, healthy awareness is obviously what we want, but I don't want things to
everywhere.
Yes.
Including River, bad things absolutely do happen, and our officers are amply prepared to deal with them. People shouldn't be concerned, however, that there's any kind of rampant street crime happening. There's not. It doesn't mean that people shouldn't take reasonable and necessary precautions, however, all the time. I do with my person and my property, and I encourage everyone else to as well, but be cognizant of your surroundings and be vigilant, but to actually be scared of street crime occurring in River Edge, while bad things can happen, we're not victims of that here.
Yeah, before we close, we've had a long evening, and I just want to make sure, Alan, is it your understanding that John will be removing the fence?
Yeah, I'll send him a memorandum tomorrow.
Great, thank you. I don't remember us kind of like formalizing that. I just want to make sure.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.